All right, we are live. It's Friday night, and it's time for Pontificators. Are you guys ready? We have Joe Albino Thunderbuns, Fulton. He's here. We have Todd Mulrooney. He's here, and we have Chester Busby III, aka Cornelius. How you guys been?
Doing good.
Doing really good.
All right. Well, we got a lot to talk about today. A lot. Some of it's fun. Some of it's a little, I guess, topical in a scary way, maybe. Depends on how you feel about the topic. But how you guys been?
Really just dealing with all of the craziness from the corona stuff. It's kind of thrown everybody off their game over in our neck of the woods. So dealing with the wife's work and the kids' school and all that stuff.
It's mostly shopping, right? And just your kids are out of school, right? They just got the school got canceled, I guess.
Yeah, well, I picked them up today and found out that the school shut down for the next 2 weeks at least, and then they will update us as the days go by. And then some kids in the neighborhood got the news today that they're out for at least a month.
A month, man. Your kids must be very excited. I know how I was when school gets canceled.
Right.
Yeah, they were excited until their teachers told them that they were going to make the parents homeschool all of them.
That's basically what there's. Yeah, that's what we're gonna have to do too. And but it is really different. You know what I mean? It's a different scenario. I'm lucky because I'm home. Imagine those parents that both parents work and they both work during the day and stuff.
Yeah.
It's got to be kind of tricky. I want to say congratulations to Liam Gray, whose project funded, and it funded pretty fast.
Oh, right on.
So
he's not just funded, but man, that guy is cleaning up, man. He's doing really well.
Yeah, kudos to him for getting one out there and getting this one funded. I know I've given him a little shit before, but a little bit of slack before, but
a little bit of shit's okay.
Yeah.
Just
a little bit.
Yeah. A smidge of poo, as they say.
A little bit.
And people should realize that one thing I'm all about is
poo.
Is good books, good well put together teams, pro looking books, stuff like that, and when I do give somebody a little bit of crap, it's not really personal, you know what I mean? And maybe what I said to him that day was a little personal, but
now you're just a sadist.
I'm not really. Chester, I would do anything for anybody when it comes down to if somebody wanted advice or do you know a good artist or anything like that. All those things I would do. You work with somebody on something, you name it, I would do it.
Except when it comes to Star Trek.
That's different when it comes to Star Trek. That's right. Yeah. Over here, though, our schools have been closed for a while now. And of course, I've been kind of lucky because I only had lost a few. I didn't lost the students, but they're not coming in for a little while. So I didn't lose much out of my pocket, right? Because I'm a businessman. I'm not a salary guy, right? So that was very good. We're still making money, but the kids are already bored because they're not supposed to go out of their houses. They're stuck in their homes. All they're doing is playing video games. The teachers gave them a ton of homework, but they're pretty much all done with it. So it's they're just bored out of their skulls. And of course, it's affected the parents directly because a lot of these, moms are having to, either take off work or get grandma and grandpa involved. So it's very, very disruptive.
Teach them how to use Hangouts. Get these kids together every day, and let's do something constructive, or maybe they all like manga or something. We can make a manga, or I don't know.
I've encouraged them to pick up and learn an instrument, or some of the older ones maybe learn a little bit of programming, or try to pick up some skill during this time. It's 30 days or more. It's a good opportunity. It's a good block of time to get something started. So that's what I've been suggesting.
You're in Japan, right? So you've been I guess kind of the shutdown or partial quarantine. I'm not sure what they call it, but you've been there for a month now, right? In that situation?
More than that. Japan reacted pretty quickly. I would say Japan was the first country to react, actually, that I know of. And they've been on it since the beginning. If you go look at the statistics for Japan, you'll see a large number, but understand that like 90% of that is on a ship that is stuck at the harbor. It's not in Japan proper, right? Japan has done a really good job of shutting this down and controlling it. They've been on it since the beginning. So I really don't have much to complain about. There are a couple little things they could have done better, I think, but politics,
Let's give them a round of applause, because we do know that a Chinese man could probably walk into Japan without a disguise and get you all sick. So,
what are you talking about? Are you trying to say all Asians look alike? Is that what you're doing, baby? You're insulting your entire species.
No,
you
you got
Chinese
letters addressed them to Todd Mulrooney.
Right, exactly. But no, actually, Chinese are very easy to see, as are Koreans.
Well, I was going to say something. How you can identify, there is a difference in the skeletal structure of the face, but I'm not going to get into it because anything I say, I'm going to sound racist.
Well, it's not just that; it's also the eyes, right? Because the Chinese eye slants up, the Korean eye slants down, and the Japanese eye is straight across.
There's also a flatter face.
But when they're all squinting, they all look the same, don't they?
Oh wow! All right, here we go.
No, I'm joking.
Right, baby. Todd Mulrooney hates you and all your people.
No, not at all.
It turns out that Todd
love
is Asian, so he can say what.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
All right, we got the super chat from D Geek Art. So just got here. Hope all is well. Yes, all is well, and I think Dee's got a couple kids, so I'm sure they're going to be home, and you guys are going to have some cabin fever soon.
Yeah,
just like Chester. So Joe's going to experience that. And Todd, have the schools in your area just shut down, or have they been shut down?
Yes, just today. Today was a local day off, and then because this is the day where they do the teacher-parent conference. And as the parents were there, they were telling them, you're going to have to do something with your kid for the next 2 weeks at minimum. So, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So it is going, it's a little unsettling, to be honest, and it's not because of the schools, right? That didn't unsettle me. What unsettled me was, you would think top smart minds would say, it's not going to, affect baseball. Don't just keep doing what you're doing, spring training. It's really hot in Florida and Arizona. You should be fine. I don't know. But, that kind of stuff is unsettling when they close sports seasons and this, that, and the other thing. And you're going, wow, this is a little bit more than I thought,
Yeah. And was it last night that the president had his speech about it?
Yeah, he's basically called a state of emergency. He's also closed the borders to the EU, which he'd already closed for Asia a long time ago. And they're working up some more efficient drive-through type of checkups like Korea has done, which was a good idea. So it's been escalating. I kind of like the way Trump's handling it. Some people are, I'm sure, going to say anything negative they can just because it's him. But it's little by little. He's not panicking. He's not throwing everything at the wall. They're systematically approaching it as it needs to be approached, and I think that's the calm way to do it.
Yeah. Do we feel like that possibly? This level is warranted, or does this feel like overreaction that's increasing into like pandemonium and possibly paranoia? Because there is a flip side, like Dr. Drew, and there's a couple other people that have come and say that it's really no more infectious or bad than a common flu, virus itself. And if you look statistically at just flus, they take quite a bit of lives every year as well. I don't have the statistics, but I know that they're quite high. And they have also said so far the only deaths related to, I'm just going to say it because I don't believe, just the coronavirus, is that there's high risk categories. So if you're older or your immune system's compromised or you have lung problems, then you will have a harder time shaking it. So how do you guys feel about that? Do you think that possibly that this is being overblown, or do you think that it's kind of warranted?
Well, I was listening to a podcast earlier today. I guess it was from a few days ago. It was on Joe Rogan's channel, and he had a guy named Michael Osterholm on there, who runs this institute out of the University of Minnesota, and they're essentially a research group. He described himself as a medical detective. They specialize in tracking down diseases, where they came from, exactly which one was patient zero, that sort of thing. And he was talking about how overall that they're recommending to the government, not only the U.S. government, but to other governments that they consult for, to essentially treat it like a really bad case of flu. So, there have been some discussions back and forth as to the average number of casualties around the world for flu. And he was kind of saying that they're looking at healthcare workers in particular, and their basis for this is past epidemics. And he was saying that as the well-being of health workers go, that will essentially give you a good idea how the health of your general populace is going to go. So he was saying that they're treating this very seriously, but it's not something that they are panicking over. It's one of those things where the way they and groups like them look at it is, okay, flu season is a challenge every year. It changes somewhat every year. There's certain things that we know will help prevent the spread of common flu. Is there anything else we can look at from this virus to institute additional measures? And he more or less came down on the side of no, that essentially they're recommending that people do what they would do anyway to mitigate the spread of flu.
Right, but the amazing thing about this is that it's a worldwide kind of shutdown, quarantine. And I mean, we've had some hellacious, health scares before. I mean, I'm old enough to remember the AIDS scare,
which was a lie.
Well, I mean, it reminds me a little bit about this, because a lot of the news were not reporting facts. It was kind of being overblown. I remember actually, I was the perfect age, I guess, single, sexually active, things like that. And I remember going to the doctor. It was probably a flu or a cold, and I couldn't shake it. And this doctor told me that I need to be tested for AIDS. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? He said, because of, your symptoms and everything else. I go, I already knew the facts. I said, I'm not in any of the high risk categories. He said, I want you to be tested anyways. And I said, no. I said, I don't have AIDS. He goes, you don't know that. And I said, I do know that, because they don't hit any of those high risk, categories. I was sexually active, but with a partner that I had been in a long-term relationship with. You know what I mean? Like none of those categories actually fit. And I remember trying to walk out of that doctor's office. I'm no longer with them. I stopped after this. And the nurse stopped me at the door, and she said, I can't let you do that. And I was like, yeah, you can. I said, I still have free will. I said, I'm not in those categories. I don't fit any of those categories. And I didn't, and nothing happened. So if I wasn't in my power and in my strength and knew like the facts and was a centered person, I could have very easily like just went out of control. You know what I mean? I would have went,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, this is an authority. He's telling me that I fit these categories. Oh my gosh, I should get tested. I should have all these things happen. And the thing is, no, I didn't. And the facts bear out. I didn't. I don't. And I didn't give in. So sometimes I think that some of the stuff can be a little bit overdone. So I'm just not for me personally. I got to read this. I'm going to read the super chat real quick. Thank you so much, D Geek Art. $2. Man, we homeschool the kids, so this will just be another day for you.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a slightly different situation than the AIDS panic. Art. The AIDS panic was a manufactured thing because basically, I mean, the gay agenda, if you want to call it that, has been around for a long time, and the fact that they were getting hit by a disease that was specific to them, basically, and I understand there's IV drug, the drug users as well were part of that, but mainly it was the homosexual community. They didn't want that stigma on them. And of course, they have a lot of influence in media, and they pushed it out to create this. Oh, it could be anybody. It could be anybody. And of course, therefore, that's why it affected you.
Right.
This situation is a little bit different. There are politics involved, particularly kind of out of China with Chinese money. And obviously, the WHO is corrupt, and they should all be fired and arrested. And there's many other people, and maybe this doctor that Joe is talking about, maybe he's been bought too. I don't know. But I will give you a primer on the situation of the statistics of coronavirus or COVID-19, and we can go from there.
Okay.
Now, here in Asia, in China particularly, where it started, a lot of people seem to be talking a lot about January or February. This is incorrect. This obviously started in November of last year. And the Communist Party was well aware of it, and they dragged their feet a long time. Any of the doctors who were coming out trying to warn about it, of course, they arrested them and shut them down. And there's still a few of them that we don't know where they are. They're gone, right? And of course, they've changed their tune now. It's gone to the point now here in March where the Chinese Communist Party is coming out, not only not taking any responsibility for the situation, but they're saying it came out of America. America did it, right? Which is very typical for the Communist Party to do. It doesn't mean anything. But as far as the statistics on the disease go, first of all, there's not 80,000 infected in China. There's hundreds of thousands. All right. And we know this very clearly over here, whether you guys know it in the West or not. It's just more lies coming out of the Communist Party. And the death toll over there, because of the lack of available medicines, hospital beds, and the fact that in many cases they're welding people into their apartment buildings, just leaving them to starve. Right. So when the WHO says China's done a great job, they're really successfully dealt with this. Well, yeah, they just murdered an extra 10% of their people just so they could make sure it doesn't move along. So I guess that's success if you want to count it that way. But the deaths are in the tens of thousands for sure. And who knows if it's slowing down or not. We don't have information. They've shut the country down completely. We can't get any information now. It should be completely shut down. But as far as the numbers go, the most important number for me is the infection rate. The infection rate on this disease in China is a R0.6. Now, to give you an understanding what that means, there's a movie that Netflix threw up very cleverly, and everyone's watching it, called the Contagion, I think it's called. And in that movie, it starts as R0.2. And then to escalate it and make it feel like, oh no, it's gotten so much worse, it's the end of the world, they moved it up to an R0.4. So this is R0.6. It's excessively contagious in China. Now, the reason why I'm being specific about China, because I'm feeling from the statistics I'm seeing from other places that this thing, where it is in different places, is not exactly the same coronavirus. The reason I say that is because of how it's infecting the local people. Now, here in China, over here in China, we have an example that's I think very telling for the what I'm about to say. There's an example of a man coming home and infecting his family with the coronavirus. But his wife, his mother, and his two children, each of them had a slightly different version of the coronavirus. Now, of course, coronavirus is the reason why they transfer from animals to humans anyway, is because they're an RNA-based disease, virus, and therefore it's very mutagenic. And with that, it can shift itself. And in this example, you see we had 5 separate different types or different versions of this specific novel coronavirus. And I think we're seeing that a lot of places. Like, for instance, Italy, we have 1,000 dead already, right, out of nowhere. And obviously that is a highly high morbidity rate with that, right? It's clearly highly deadly. So we're looking at what, 7, 8, 10% mortality over there as of right now. We don't have all the good numbers.
Are they still fitting in that category where it's people with weakened immune systems, older people, people with lung problems?
Yes, mainly they are the most susceptible, but there are young people who have died as well.
Okay.
But it is mainly that, sure. But my point being, like say here in Japan or in America, we're certainly seeing a steady increase of it, although it's not a blooming. But we do have a steady increase. The mortality rate is very low. Like here in Japan, it's under 1%. It's kind of like sitting around what the Spanish flu was back 100 years ago. So it's so radically dynamic from one country to the next that it's really hard to get a handle on it. And I think one of the aspects of it is this, all coronavirus viruses are mutagenic. It's by their very nature they are. But this one I think is highly mutagenic. So I think what's hitting over in the Middle East and Italy is a more virulent version, that's in America. And of course, these things are always adjusting themselves. They're always mutating, which is why when the hot weather comes up, we can see them burn themselves out, right? So it's this, I think, is a confusing point that we may hopefully we'll learn about in the future, but we might never know. But as far as speaking the deadliness of it, I think it's very specific to where you are and which coronavirus is running around where you are. Because the statistics are just all over the place. Now, I understand we can't trust Chinese numbers. We can't trust Iranian numbers. There's certain countries you're not going to be able to trust the numbers at all. But overall, in the countries we can, we're seeing an incredible inconsistency with this virus, which is a bit unprecedented, to be honest with you. A lot of like SARS and things like that, which SARS on average had a much higher morbidity rate, right? It was more deadly than this thing is supposedly supposed to be, unless you say you live in Italy or the Middle East. So it's very odd. But I think the thing to keep in mind is this thing is highly contagious. And in general, you'll probably be fine and just have a really bad flu. But why risk it? Wash your hands.
You can walk around and be contagious and not even know that you're sick, right? I mean,
that's the problem. So it's 27 days.
Aspect of it that you could walk around and you could be, basically infecting a lot of people and not even know.
That's true.
I think that's like usually, when you have a normal flu or whatever, you feel the symptoms pretty quickly. So, you can basically change your, you can stay away from work, other people, so you don't, infect them. But this one, it kind of is like you can go into mass population, like places that are mass, with population, and you can affect, many people and not even know that. And is that one of the big differences in this is that you can kind of have that contagion for a long period of time in your body before you even show symptoms?
I think it's a huge issue because so far the longest exposure to symptoms is 27 days. That's a ridiculously long time to be walking around, right?
Yeah.
So it is a big issue. And I think it's also important to understand how this thing hits you. This is mainly affecting the respiratory system, your lungs and stuff like that. But it's not only that. And another thing that this virus does it's not unique, but it's exceedingly rare, is once you've got it and you've got past it, you can catch it again.
Really?
Now that doesn't usually happen. And the problem, the second time you catch it, you're dead. You're done, because it's been causing heart attacks, oddly, in the people who catch it again. Another aspect of this disease, this virus that no one's talking about, is that it's hitting men more than women by far, but it's also making men sterile. It is affecting their testes.
This is engineered.
It feels like it, and there's a lot of evidence to get into that, huh?
Population control.
Yeah, well, I mean, and there is evidence, because here over the past so many years, I'd say past decade, China has been working on biological weapons, even though they're not supposed to. But hey, I'm sure there's plenty of countries that are doing that. And one of the things they've been specifically working on, and they put out documentation on this, by the way. This isn't secret. The scientists are happy to report it over the past 10 years or so. They've been working specifically on aspects of SARS and weaponizing it. They have been working on making it respiratory. They've been working on it affecting the testes, and therefore reducing the ability for you to reproduce. Everything I've just mentioned has been reported by the Chinese government through their scientists that they have been working on, and their various levels of success. So it's quite ironic to me that all of a sudden we have a disease that's doing exactly of what they have been working on. And all the other evidence about the interaction with Canada, and the fact that they stole something from the Canadian virology laboratories, and Canada is not even, they're kind of bickering and not even talking to each other right now. The fact that they lied about where their virology laboratories were. Of course, now we know there is one that's 200 meters away from the frickin' supposed center, which isn't the center, because keep in mind, this started in November. So we don't know exactly where it started, but there's a lot of evidence that suggests that this is engineered, and it got out accidentally.
Well, Bob says Comic Book Bob says there's a new theory that this is a test release. They want to see infection statistics for use in other bioweapons infused with the same infection traits. Well, if this is true, this is a conspiracy on a level that I've never seen before, because this is worldwide. So if whoever's making these decisions, if you believe in this conspiracy, it's affecting the whole world. So there's many people involved with making these decisions. So if it is like a test for some kind of population control, then this is pretty scary, my friend. Yeah. This is not sci-fi. This is real.
Well, now I know you don't want to. You want to talk about how this affects the entertainment industry and stuff, but I just want to kind of give a primer on what the thing is and where it's kind of sitting before we get into that conversation, because I think it will apply, right?
Just on another, to preface this, Chester does this to me at least once a week, where he scares the bejesus out of me. So this is nothing new. Kind of getting used to it.
It's what Chester does, and that's why we love him.
He's just the smartest guy in the room who knows way too much, and that's the gist of it,
Yeah,
I love you too. Are you trying to warm me up so I'll be nice to you later when we start talking about Star Trek?
If we ever get there, because you ducked out last week, you big.
Oh, that's right. I did. I ran away. My tail between my legs, even.
Yeah. You knew I was prepared last week, and you just figured I'll just let him get on his heels a little bit.
Yeah, maybe. That was my strategy. Yeah.
Todd's going to bring the thunder, and he wanted to give you, Chester, a little bit, like an extra week to bone up on your arguments.
That's true. Yeah. Thank you, Todd.
Comic Book Bob,
get Bob in here. He's a pretty good speaker, Art.
Yeah.
Can you guys send him a link?
Yeah, I can figure it out.
Well, let's wait. We'll send him a link when we get to the Star Trek stuff, because to be honest, I'm not that in the know with Star Trek, so it'll be fun to get somebody else in here that can referee you guys. Yeah. So Yeah, so yeah, I thought it would be interesting to talk about now that Chester has done a good job of kind of setting everything up, and that we kind of understand our position. Is the entertainment, like, what is this doing to entertainment, and what is it going to do long term? Because we already know the stock market is fluctuating, and that
It's been frozen, Art.
It's frozen. Oh,
yeah. Trump shut it down.
Okay, because yesterday, when did he shut it down? Must have been today.
A couple days ago.
Oh, because I was still seeing like Disney stock and things being traded and just fluctuating like crazy. I think it was a day or two ago.
Yeah, let me check.
Sure?
I'm pretty sure. Let me check.
Yeah. But anyway, we've been seeing the ripples of this, and I was going to, like, personally, I was going to release my black and white Vampirilla variant cover today, and I had to postpone it because I was advised by numerous people, but one was Dynamite Entertainment, that this might not be a good time. And so then I started, this was a day or two ago, and so then I started looking at other people's Indiegogo campaigns, and a lot of them have flatlined. So there are people that are scared right now and that aren't spending money on, I guess, just fun things or entertainment related items. And so I just thought that this might be an interesting conversation to see how this affects stuff that we do, drawing comic books, writing comic books,
sure,
and also just pop culture stuff that we like. Because I know the Disney parks, I think all of them are closed now. All the local amusement parks have closed here. I know a lot of the sports teams have closed up, and even conventions. I think that WonderCon is coming up in Anaheim, and they're talking about, I think it's shut down right now.
Yeah,
and
they already.
Oh, go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to say, we got a notice, I think it was yesterday. It's either yesterday or the day before that they officially postponed it. They say they are looking for other venues, but honestly, with everything I've seen from the convention circuit, my guess is that it'll probably, if they can't reschedule it for summertime or fall, they'll probably have to just write it off for 2020.
I think they're going to write it off because they're also talking about San Diego as possibly being affected by this as well. And that's a summer show. So, these are run by the same people. So you're going to have two cons run back to back, in the summertime.
Well, they shut E3 down already, Art.
Yeah. I was surprised that the Chicago C2E2 actually it happened, but I think that they were trying to minimize groups of people. Like, so certain halls, they would kind of minimize the amounts of people, just so if there was contagion, it wouldn't, because what is it? Was it like 250 people? Is that what they're advising? Like, if there's a room with any more than 250 people, they advise against it. Is that still a thing?
The stuff I've seen now has been, the number's been dropped down to 100.
Oh my gosh. We just got tickets for the whiskey. There's a band called they're called Birthday Massacre, and my daughter and I were going to go. And now the ticket, agency has contacted us and say it probably isn't going to happen because the venue holds 300 people. So this
all my gigs are shut down too.
Yeah, this is pretty insane because it also, this is how most of us, well, Todd, myself, and Joe's getting into it. We feed ourselves, with, entertainment. We create entertainment for people. So this is definitely sends some major ripples because I don't know. They're even advising that maybe Ethan Van Sciver should maybe not do his Indiegogo for Wrecked Planet this Sunday.
Yeah.
Just because that the market just might not be there for him.
Yeah, well, people are turtling, and and to put to the initial question, is there overreaction going on? I'm sure there is. But people are turtling, so it's and in that time they tend to spend less money. So that's a fair point. Just to update on the Dow Jones, Trump said he would shut it down if it goes below 20,000, which it hasn't done. So I was wrong. And Blue Samurai Zero says, Cornelius, can you talk about China and the Beltway of water trade around Southwest Asia? Their collectivist mindset is that they already own anyone they trade with, etc. I certainly could, but that is a long conversation, dude. So if Art would like to talk about China in general on a show, I'd be happy to do so. But that's a long conversation, and I don't think we have time for it here today.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and sorry about that, but I kind of want to keep it focused on entertainment because I also think that as far as summer release, like movie releases, like there's going to be so many things that are affected just on an entertainment level.
There will be a lot of things affected, but I keep hearing people talk about, even like Andrew, you know who Andrew is. I've talked about Andrew before. Oh, this will be a huge interruption in their business, and they'll lose money, and then there'll be, these are, this, that, and the other thing. Well, first off, corporations like Disney and, anyone with, big dollars have something called business interruption insurance. So if you're sitting here thinking, oh my God, they're going to lose money, and then they'll sell Marvel off or whatever, that's not going to happen. There's insurance for all this kind of stuff, money loss. So it's
no, I'm worried about little guys like us, Todd. Like that's people that are putting out entertainment, and even like movie theaters, or like the club like that that my daughter and I are going to go, the Whiskey. They're not making a crap ton of money, so when they miss a good weekend worth of income, that affects their bottom line. When I have to postpone a release of a project that I was thinking was going to bring in X amount of revenue for the next couple months, then that does affect my bottom line. And so those are the things that I was thinking. Small club owners, even Chester plays music, and he was saying that they cut those things down because you're playing to a good sized crowd. So any money you were making, Chester, on the side, you're not going to be able to have.
No. And they've shut it down all the way up until August, dude. That's how many gigs I've lost. 5 months worth of gigs gone.
Are the karaoke bars shut down too?
They have
mostly, yeah. I mean, we in my
Japan's not messing around.
No, Japan's not playing at all. Which I said, their response has been very good. Which I was very surprised by the West talking about how poorly Japan was dealing with it, and then I realized it was the WHO saying it, and then I understood where it was coming from. Right, but because Japan's done a really good job of dealing with it, actually. It's actually gone very deep. For instance, we have red light districts in Japan. America doesn't really do that. More like Europe, we have, and we have had one case in the prefecture.
Long time districts.
Oh, there's part of that. Those things are in there too. But these are also the places where I do a lot of gigs, dude. Right. But we had one infection in the entire prefecture, and it was in the Miyakamachi, which is a red light district up in the northern city. And that entire place is down. It's completely shut down, dude. And that is just a rocketing amount of money lost for those people. And we actually had a fire out of nowhere yesterday at one of the buildings in Miyakamachi. And I kind of, it's sad, but the first thing that came to my mind was, insurance.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is certainly affecting entertainment, not only comic books and movies, but it's also affecting music venues and as well the soaplands, which here in Japan is what they call a brothel. It's affecting all of that.
Well, I was doing a little research about like movies and TV shows that are in development right now or actually filming that have been put on hold. And I guess statistically speaking, when some movies go on on hiatus or get put on hold, sometimes they don't come back, just because of financially, like insurance, things like that, just pull out. So a lot of the summer releases that they've talked about happening may not even come out. So movie theaters, like there's just going to be some crazy ripple effects. Like movie theaters are going to be hit. The studios are going to be hit. I know, Todd, that we shouldn't feel sorry for big, like Disney and Warner Brothers and stuff like that. But it's still going to affect like those people that are like us, that are lighting guys, that are special effects guys, and not everybody's making the big bucks. So all those guys, their lives are being put on hold too, and some of these productions won't come back. So some of these movies that are on schedule for these production studios, they're not going to happen. So even like something like Disney Plus, they said a lot of those shows that they've promised people, may not even happen. And at the very least, they're going to be way late.
Yeah.
So,
Well, think about the poor New Mutants movie. How many times has that been canceled, moved around, reshot? It just got postponed again.
Well, from what I hear, it isn't going to happen. That's one of those shows that, because like the insurance and all the other things, that it probably will not happen.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, they were even talking that possibly Ghostbusters that might not make the grade.
Well, they pushed back the new Bond movie, which I'm not too sad about because that's going to be a train wreck anyway. But there's a lot of it. It's really affecting entertainment business, and I'm kind of curious because you were talking about comic book stuff, and I mentioned the turtling. But how do we think as far as comic books directly? How do we think the brick and mortars are being affected?
Well, if no one sitting at home is willing to buy a crowdfund book on either Kickstarter or Indiegogo, I don't think they're going to get in their car and drive somewhere. So I think they are going to be affected. I don't see how anybody is not going to be affected by this worldwide.
Yeah.
It's just, and then Chester, you said till August, like at least in the States, saying like weeks and months and stuff like that. But do you think that, just to project, do you think that they're saying, like in the States, that they're giving these conservative numbers because they don't want to scare people?
I think they are being conservative. They don't want to create a panic. Trump has obviously been doing that. You watch the way he's speaking and stuff. And, I saw the president give an announcement from the Oval Office, which he doesn't do a lot. He's usually out in public. But he gave it from the Oval Office, and he was reading a prepared speech. Now, how un-Trumpian is that?
Yeah.
Right? Because that's one of his, better points. The dude never has a script in front of him, right? But they're taking it very serious. They're being very careful with their words, and I don't blame them. I think a government's responsibility is to keep the calm as well. I'm not as worried about the economics in America because I know this is a situation where the people in charge are really good at that. That's what they're strong at. So I think it would be all right, but to a point. But the economic turndown is inevitable. It's definitely going to affect the entire planet. You have to keep in mind that we're not getting any kind of shipments coming out of China. And for me, I think the most important lesson I hope that we learn out of this certain situation. One, I think it's a good dry run. It's a good bit of practice for something that would be even more deadly. And to try to plug those leaks, as it were, right? But another really important thing is the understanding that China has way too much control over production. And this, of course, was done by the globalists. It was the intention to turn America into basically a eating country where they make all their money off America with everyone selling our stuff and reduce production in America. And they were very successful at that. But the problem is now you have like the near 100% of all things like antibiotics and other kind of important drugs are produced in China. right? And now what is China doing? They're turning around and threatening that if America doesn't apologize or doesn't do this or that, they'll just shut it off. Now that would cause death, right? So China is in effect threatening death upon America right now, kind of similar to what Iran used to do all the time. Well, still does. But this is the thing that needs to come out of it. We need to understand that we need to produce certain items locally. Now, if you want to make a bunch of plastic crap in China, go for it. That's fine. But drugs, important medical supplies, et cetera, need to be produced locally in your own country. And hopefully this will make that come to the forefront, and we'll see governments make some shift.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that even a lot of my crowdfund buddies who were going to have their book printed in China are last minute right now scrambling to find U.S. printers to do. And I know that for Chrono Mechanics, we were going to go with Print Ninja, and I'm not going to touch that. I'm looking at printers here in the States. So even if it's going to cost more, I have to do it because the delay is just insane. I can't imagine anybody who has a business right now and is waiting for things to come from China and depending on those, for their bottom line. Those things are all held up in customs now, and who knows when they're going to get those things.
No, it's fair point. Could you highlight Blue Samurai's most recent comment, please?
I saw that. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. No, dude, that is an excellent point you're making. This globalist agenda has been going on for 200 years, actually, and it has nothing to do with political parties at all. Yeah, it is a mindset.
Right. And also the thing is, I don't think, if we're going to put our tinfoil hats on and some of this stuff I really believe, but some of it, it's fun just to talk about. But, this was years ago when I found out there were only 200 major corporations in the entire world. So everything else is a subsidiary. I'm sure it's even smaller than that by now. And so we know mostly, that everything's run by corporations anyways, and the rich, even politics and policies and procedures are all done, by these mysterious, people in the shadows. So if we can agree on that, then basically NAFTA and tearing down, borders and free trade and all these things, these have all kind of gone in one direction, and the direction is towards a global economy and more of a world market for these rich and elite to exploit. And it makes sense if you think about it. If you are rich and you live, like, just say in the United States, and you can only kind of trade within your own country, then you're only going to be able to get so rich because it's limited. But if you can expand that beyond your parameters, if all of a sudden borders don't exist anymore and you can free trade with anybody and co-op, with any country you want, then truly world domination is at your disposal. Yeah. And like you said, Chester, I think, most people, or these people in the shadows, I don't know their names, but they're basically using China as manufacturing, or these other places, Mexico and these places that they can exploit easily enough, or that are readily, accepting of it. That's basically, these countries are manufacturing for the world now. So it's not a regional thing anymore. It's, everything is, instead of just, a small town, like a steel mill or whatever it is that takes care of, the surrounding areas. This is now just on high, these elites that basically have figured out how to make the world their oyster. You know what I mean? Like, they can just basically say this region of the world is going to be our manufacturing. This part of the world are going to be predominantly, purchasers of those products. Like the U.S. doesn't really export much of anything anymore.
No, we're just consumers. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
but it's There's a couple things with it, Art, though, of what, just to touch on what you mentioned. Keep in mind with China that they've basically implemented the Roman concept, right? Because China has slave labor. Even the people that they pay very little, and they can control that because of the communist control. It's the perfect place to do production because they can control the costs, right? And then they can jack the prices to incredible heights. Do keep in mind, businesses are making more money percentage-wise than they ever have, even back when child labor was still allowed, right? They're doing way better now than they ever had. But also keep in mind that it's talking about who. I don't know if you're aware of this, but 80% of the entire world's debt, let me say it again, 80% of the entire world's debt is controlled by 5 companies. And those 5 companies are all part of the Bilderberg Group.
There you
All
go.
of them.
So from 200 to 5 or whatever it is now. Yeah. I mean, merger mania. I mean, all you see is big businesses buying up businesses and just absorbing all kinds of things. So inevitably there is really just going to be a handful of corporations or people that are going to be calling shots, not just for where you live, but for the entire world. And these are things that people don't talk about. And I think the reason they don't talk about it is because you sound like, I even had to preface it with like a tinfoil hat because it sounds really, really far-fetched. But the reason I give it any kind of legitimacy is when I can't come up with tangible, answers, and things don't seem to make sense, then sometimes these things are the only, like these crazier ideas are the only things that do. And most of the time for me, it comes down to dollars and cents. So if there's money involved, then that's usually when I go, okay, then that's why this is happening, because of the bottom line, which is money or power.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not a conspiracy theory, though, Art. I mean, rich people trying to stay rich and hold power. Well, what's a conspiracy about that?
Yeah, but I think I just say it just so people don't take me too seriously, because I don't want them to think I'm crazy. You know what I mean? Because I mean, you and I mean, and probably, everybody on the panel and in the chat kind of understand these things. But if I talked about this at a dinner party with, normies, I think they'd go, what are you talking about? They would think you're a little nutty. So that's why I say that. But yeah, I agree with you. I think that these things are happening and are continuing to happen. And you talk about, oh man, we're going off on so much of a tangent, but this is actually, kind of more fun anyway, is that if we're talking about slavery, just the shift from the dollar bill to credits or credit cards, when you take the power out of people's hands, where you can basically save, and the only money that you can spend is tangible money that you've earned, then you get into less problems. But debt on a level, like even like if you owe your bank X amount of dollars, then you're a slave to them. And if your card is like 20% interest rate for every purchase, so every $100 you spend, they're going to tap on $20 to it. This is unreasonable. And you talk about slavery, you can get in so over your head in no time at all just by owning a credit card. It takes incredible discipline not to get in over your head. And the thing is, even our leaders can't do that. Look at how much money these countries are in debt. Like everybody is indebted to everybody else. So to me, this is contemporary slavery. Like I'll never, like most people will never be able to get themselves out of debt. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And especially when you put it on the fact that we've been off the gold standard for decades. There's a fiat currency system in place that basically means that because the paper money has no value whatsoever. And talking about countries in debt, understand that China has been very quickly buying up a lot of African countries and buying a lot of the land and playing a little Ponzi, not Ponzi scheme, but playing a scheme on them that gets them into debt, and then therefore they gain control over their properties and their things. And no one has staunched the effect of that, which I am shocked because China has got their talons so deep into Africa right now. It's to be fair, terrifying. And then when you add on top of the fact that the Chinese people in general hate black people, they can't stand them. They see them as inhuman.
Well, there you go. Well, also, I mean, just in this country, where the banks were going to the American farmer and they were saying, "Hey, listen, you need to keep up with production. We're going to help you become more I guess feasible or more productive. We're going to give you loans to buy equipment and to basically upgrade your farms." And so a lot of these banks were, giving them loans, and these farms, these mom and pop farms that have been in people's, family lineage for decades, started going belly up because they couldn't pay back these loans to the banks. And so then the banks foreclosed, and now we have corporate farms like crazy. So, and then just the housing market that happened here in SoCal not too long ago, where they were giving out loans to people that didn't really qualify for them. Those people got in over their heads with balloon payments and all kinds of stuff. And then the bank got to repossess and make money off that. And also these banks started selling these loans to foreign investors. My brother, there's a lot of people I know that got into some trouble, and they couldn't even figure out, Chester, they couldn't even figure out who owned their loan. They couldn't even figure out who the owner. They found out that it was all overseas. Like it was all like Asian investors that were coming in. So the banks here were selling these loans to foreign investors.
Yeah, no, they have. China's been heavily involved in that, owning a lot of America, and it's kind of, once again, the word ironic, because Trump's been talking about this for a while, and people keep calling him crazy, right? And of course, he's 100% right on this. I mean, when it comes to business, just listen to the man. If you don't like the way he acts, you don't like his unpresidential, statesman-like type of attitude, that's fine. But when it comes to business, listen to the dude. Right, he knows what he's talking about, and this kind of thing has been going on for quite a while, actually, where China has been buying out a lot, of course, Monsanto. To be fair to it as well, Trump has addressed this recently, and he's thrown $50 billion at the American farmer to try to help with this type of thing. So he is trying to push back against it, which because I'm always stuck in a little bit of a quandary when it comes to Trump, because the establishment is reacting as if he's a rebel that's causing trouble. He seems like he's a rebel that's causing trouble. But then again, I always question that there isn't just theater going on, because keep in mind this little teeny fact that I could go on and on for, but I'm not going to. But the one little fact: every president we've ever had in America's history has been related to the Bruce family in Scotland. All of them.
Wow, I didn't know
that. Even Trump, right? Either direct blood or married to. Right, and I don't know if you guys know this, but Barack Obama and George W. Bush are cousins.
Are they second cousins?
Something like that. But they're all, even Barack Obama is directly related by blood to the Bruce family in Scotland. Now, you can't tell me that's a coincidence. That's obviously planned. And therefore, the theater of politics is something that I always keep in the back of my mind, because it's, this is us versus them type of thing. It's a pretty standard thing to keep a population in check. It's a population control. So Trump is a bit of a quandary for me, because he seems to be an outsider that is messing with the brew, as it were. But then again, is he though? I don't know.
I mean, from our point of view, no, but from others, yes. I mean, he was there. He knows firsthand what's happening in New York City for decades, where foreign investors, I mean, things that you think are owned by, like these major buildings, and God, what was it? I forget the statistic, but it was really high percentage of Manhattan owned by foreign investors, most of it Asian. I mean, when you think about, even Columbia Pictures is Sony. So, when you drive into Hollywood, they still try to keep it like it feels like old Hollywood, where it still says Columbia Pictures, but it really is Sony. Once you get in the lot, which I've been, everything says Sony.
Yeah. No, it's true. And think about the Midwest. The vast majority of the Midwest is controlled and owned by the federal government, which is weird. But then keep in mind when you and I are not allowed to buy any of that property, right? But yet they keep selling it to China.
Right.
Right.
And the thing is, you talk about land. Okay, my wife and I, we've almost paid this house down. In a couple years, we will own it. But if we don't pay our taxes on this land, we won't own it anymore.
Oh, you don't own anything at all.
Yeah. So what kind of ownership do you really have? You have
you
no
haven't.
ownership. It's an illusion of ownership. It's crazy. How can you pay something off and then not own it? Oh, there's string. Yeah. The government owns it. You're just leasing the land pretty much. It's
illusion. Yeah, that's true. And it goes for anything of big ticket value. The only thing you actually own are those little things that you put on your back. Everything else you don't. You don't own your car usually because if you don't pay taxes, you don't do your safety check, you don't do whatever, you get stopped from using it. And some of this is, I think, simply systematic, and some of it is insidious. But it's true. You don't really own anything. And I feel bad though, Art, because we have completely shut down Todd and Thunderbuns. It's not fair, dude.
Well, do you guys want to? I have some fun stuff that maybe we can clear the air, and then you guys can go. Guys can go at your battle, the Star Trek battle.
Sure.
Yeah, the only thing that I would add are, you were talking about the smaller companies and the creators who are publishing their own work. One of the things that occurred to me earlier in the week is that a lot of the paper mills in the US got shut down because so much of that business was sent over to China.
Yeah.
And if China decides to, really start getting ugly, like Chester was talking about, there's no question that paper prices, among many other things, are going to start going up significantly, which then means our printing costs go up significantly.
Well, that's a good question. So even putting that on the table, movies, are those probably going to go up? Is the cost of a lot of these things that are hurting right now, are they going to go up to try to compensate for the money lost, now?
They always put the cost on the consumer, dude.
So then, maybe the prices of, go see a movie is going to go up. Your restaurant, because restaurants are going to start hurting soon, and so on and so on. So yeah, so then that increased price will just get transferred to the consumer.
Yeah,
we have that to look forward to.
Right.
Well, I mean, if you look at inflation, I mean, we haven't really, no one really talks about it for some odd reason. But if you look at the inflation, it does take place, of course. If you think about what the average worker is making today per hour for their job, compared to what they made, say, in the 80s, right, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and you compare that to how much everything around you has increased in price, well, it's astronomical. And of course, specifically when it comes to ownership of things like homes, cars, and things like that, it has become very, very expensive. And this is very, very troublesome going forward. Now, you get a lot of people screaming about $15 minimum an hour and all that stuff, and I get why they're doing that. But of course, it's not the right way to go about it, because it's not how it works. That cost is not going to help you. They're just going to increase the price of everything. It's not the actual way to solve the situation. But the overall market and the cost of life and this modern slavery that you're hinting at is becoming more and more invasive.
I agree. I completely agree. And the thing is, like with my daughter, I don't know how to advise her to get out of it. I mean, the only thing that we're thinking is, oh, we're going to move out of Southern California. But when you look at other states, they're starting to implement a lot of these things as well, even Texas, so where would you go?
Yeah.
Where do you go to keep your freedoms? Where can you hide? A lot of these states are basically implementing the same ideas. So yeah, it's quite an interesting world that, and usually, I've been around for quite a bit of time. We're all older pretty much, and I haven't seen this rapid change in my lifetime. It seems like change is happening relatively quickly, like within the last decade. It seems like almost everything is up for grabs, including morality.
When you
It is
to the
true.
last big outbreaks, whether it was SARS or MRSA, that was before the advent of social media, really.
Yeah.
There might have been a couple of nascent bits of it. Let's just say MySpace being the most advanced at the time. And so what we're watching is information and misinformation being disseminated at a rate we've never seen before when it comes to outbreaks of this nature.
It's very true. Very
I
true.
gotta read this. Art hasn't seen this rapid a change since the invention of the printing press. This is true. When I say we're old, well, I'm old. You guys are probably all younger than I am. But yeah,
A little bit, not much.
yeah, that is true. Yeah, the printing press.
Yeah.
Sorry, Joe. Go ahead.
Oh, no big deal. I was just saying that the last time we saw big outbreaks, let's say 04, 05 time frame, with SARS, things like SARS, MRSA, we didn't have social media in its current state. And the internet, even though it had been around for a while, it was still, relatively speaking, pretty young. So the way that information and misinformation gets sent around the globe these days, it's just precipitated the spread of information, both for better and for worse. And I think we're seeing the effects of that.
Yeah, I agree. And also, one of the things we talked just before we got in here, and yes, Chester is a source of misinformation. Nothing he says is true.
That's true.
Take that with a grain of salt.
Don't listen to a word I say. That's fair. That's fair.
We were talking, since you kind of were going in this direction anyways, Albino, is YouTube, and how we were talking off air that you're not supposed to use coronavirus on YouTube because you may get, demonetized. And this is also like pretty scary. Like, why can't you? Like, what are they afraid of?
Yeah, in some ways, I think that YouTube tries to, on Google for sure, they try to approach that public benefit corporation line, where we saw Kickstarter, they achieved their public benefit corporate status, which essentially means that they're not, their highest priority doesn't have to be to making their shareholders a profit. And that's how, a company like Kickstarter, their employees decide they're going to unionize. The bosses say, no, you're not. And the employees say, yes, we are. And then at the end of the day, they go ahead and do it. With Google, for months, if you said at first, well, I guess at first you could say it, but then when it broke containment, so to speak, in China, then Google suspiciously decided that you couldn't say coronavirus anymore, or else you get demonetized.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be, they didn't want to contribute to causing a panic, and they didn't want to financially reward people for doing so, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It was
Too
only
late for that. Yeah.
It was only this morning. I believe it was this morning. I'd have to double check that to be sure, but the CEO of YouTube had said that they're going to modify. They had placed the word coronavirus and various alternative usages. They had placed it under their sensitive elements, I think what they call it, sensitive element status, where any mention of it automatically gets you demonetized. And if you talk about it in combination with certain other words, then they start looking at you for a strike and so on and so forth. Then today, she said in a blog post that they were going to lift the restrictions for certain channels. And then the weird thing was that it was something along the lines of it's up to the channels to self-certify that they are providing some sort of educational or informational content that is helpful and not harmful and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I just think it's weird just to ban a word. Like,
Yeah.
it's not. It's crazy because it should be what you're saying or how you're using or what you're talking about, not just a word. The word is just a name. It's just what we call the virus. It doesn't have any power unto itself. This is some scary times. I think there's just to wrap this part of it up. I think that we're going to have to start passing some laws. I know that Prager University has some lawsuits against YouTube and things because they've banned some of their videos and things just for because they didn't like what they were saying. And I think that these lawsuits have to be fought, and we need to see a lot more of them, because if we don't do it ASAP, then the status quo is going to be what it is, and it's going to be harder to repeal some of these laws, or to even write some of these laws that give us more freedom in the airwaves. Because I guess the big thing is like if it's Facebook, they say, well, it's a private company so that they can censor people, but it's not quite that. It's also public. It is a public airwaves as well. So where does the law, it's not quite one thing and it's not quite the other. And if anything, it's probably more of a public forum than it is, a private company.
Not to mention that there are a multitude of government agencies that have Facebook pages that they use to communicate with the public, which makes an argument that it is at least a partial public utility.
Yeah,
absolutely.
These lawsuits need to be fought right now, and these things need to be put on the books, because the longer the status quo goes, the harder it's going to be to change. And if people get acclimated to these ways of doing business, then they're just not going to care. I know, like, younger generations don't even understand when people like us talk about freedoms that we once had. And how many of those freedoms are being taken away, like I said, in the last 10 years. It's absolutely staggering, but nobody really talks about these things. They just kind of go along with the program. And I know a lot of the youth today don't even know what has been taken away from them or what is being taken away from them.
Yeah, all four of us remember what life was like on September 10th, 2001. And then by September 12th, we were fast learning that life no longer existed.
Yeah.
Very true. Very true. It is absolutely Orwellian, all this stuff that's going on. And just to kind of wrap up everything we've been saying, I would add this to it. If any of you have never read Ayn Rand, and I understand that her economic approach to life might not be for everybody, because it is pretty cold-hearted. But I suggest you go read Ayn Rand, because this lady, many, many, many decades ago, predicted near 100% what would happen. It's shocking how accurate she was. And therefore, that would assume that a lot of her other predictions or her predicting in the future would be more also accurate. So I just suggest you go read Ayn Rand. It's shocking.
Yeah, it's a prediction. And there's been a ton of sci-fi that have warned us on a lot of these things too, and they're all cautionary tales. And it seems like friends that I know that are in the industry, this is what drives me crazy. I see things on Facebook and I'm like, you guys write these stories, you draw these stories, and everything that you're supporting now and all of this stuff, it's like it's the direct opposite of anything that you've been writing or that you say that you liked over your entire existence. Jules Verne's, all these different writers that have predicted future events, and things are happening now, and you don't see it as like, oh yeah, this is what they said 100 years ago or whatever. This is what they've been warning us with these films and these stories for ever, and they're falling right into it like it never existed. Like they don't even see how they connect so how they connect so strongly with the thing that they're being warned against. Like their points of view are the warnings. Their points of view are the things that we were warned about, and how readily they are to just embrace those things for the, I don't know, to try to have a kinder, gentler world, to have like this utopia that the government or the ruling class are promising them. And I'm sorry, these are not the answers. We've been warned in the past. These are not the answers.
To answer your question, Blue Samurai, I would suggest that you read her. Of course, The New Left is very important for what I'm talking about. You also have her book on objectivism, as well as The New Intellectual, Capitalism. I think it was The Unknown Ideal. And also an interesting book, as well as philosophy, I think, Who Needs It? These are really good places to start with Ayn Rand. A lot of people only know Atlas Shrugged, which is an interesting book, but that's more of a novelization it's more of a story. These other ones are more practical approaches to, modern economic philosophy and such, political philosophy. So that's what I would suggest.
Yes. So I got to show you this real quick. I'm just going to break it, and then we're going to bring Comic Book Bob in, and then we're going to have a knockdown drag out. All right, let me do this. Okay. All right, you guys. This is Robotics, and these are trials for a Spider-Man, for a robotic Spider-Man.
Boston Dynamics.
Yeah, Disney has like audio animatronics. So now Disney has stuntronics.
Oh, wow.
So think of this as a Spider-Man robot. Watch this.
Looks so human.
Robot, man.
Yeah.
Look at that, the hero pose. Okay.
That's good.
It's nuts, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy. And then I have where is it? That's not it. That is not it. It is this one. Okay. So this is that same robot but dressed like Spider-Man. Let me bring it back. That one looks a little mannequin-ish, but so yeah, that's going to we're going to have robots fairly soon, you guys. It's going to be
pretty cool, though.
Yeah, and I guess they're doing an Avengers campus. So California Adventure, they're already gearing up for, like, it's a Spider-Man attraction, and they're going to have Spider-Man basically leap between buildings like that. My wife was like, why don't they just get stunt people to do it? And I'm thinking, yeah, but I don't know if robots are cool. You know. Yeah.
They are cool.
Yeah. Okay.
Someone mentioned Chuck E. Cheese. There you go, whiskey bacon.
Oh, this goes beyond Chuck E. Cheese, man.
Right. Actually, I prefer Showbiz Pizza, but that's just me, I guess.
That's just you. But either way, the food is crap.
Pretty much, yeah.
All right, man. We're bringing in Comic Book Bob. How are you, Comic Book Bob?
Boys, you're freaking out over this virus thing. No reason. Your boys got the hookup, man. Check this out. Check this out.
Elderberry.
I got cases, baby, and this ain't that distilled crap. This is spring water, baby. Spring water. You need hand sanitizer? I got that stuff by the gallon. And if you don't want the liquid, I got wipes.
Yeah, but
TP.
Where are you in like toilet paper? Oh, there it is.
Oh,
It is.
look at this. This ain't none of that prison shit with freaking pieces of wood in it. This is quilted triple ply.
Oh,
baby.
baby.
And for you big spenders, I got flushable wipes.
Oh my gosh, who do you have to kill for that?
This is pricey, so I gotta ask. You got any women? So just saying.
Bob needs women.
Call me.
Bob needs women.
Well, how you doing, man? Welcome to Bob.
Thanks for having me on, Mart. I love you, man.
Hey, no problem, man. Love you too. We got before we go any further, we got whiskey bacon. Whiskey bacon, my two favorite things. $10, great stream art, very interesting, loving it. Yeah, I think this Pontificators thing is starting to work out, man. It's starting to happen. We're building it.
I'm doing my Malin impression right now. I got to pull down as far as I can.
There you go.
Can't show the eyebrows.
It looks more like Peter Samedi, but that's all right.
Peter Samedi, if he ate another Peter Samedi.
I see
Maybe.
Is that a black and white book on your wall there?
That is not just black and white, my friend. That is the original black and white.
Hell yeah.
Black and white.
Yeah.
Oh, gee.
Right next to Graveyard Shift. Hallelujah.
Yes, sir. Bought that sucker back in the 90s.
Oh, cool, man. Okay, so Bob, where are you at as far as like 1 to 10 on your Star Trek knowledge?
I think I'm up there with the best, man.
Okay, so this is gonna get good. Hey, Todd, where are you at 1 to 10?
Well, 10, but this isn't really going to go about knowledge. See, Chester thinks the current Star Trek Discovery and Picard is nothing but pure crap.
Yeah, but you're going to have to back this up with knowledge.
Yeah, right. But Chester's one of these guys who's hanging on to the status quo because 3 clones of the original wasn't enough for him. He needs 2 or 3 more before he's satisfied.
Yeah,
Okay,
before this is done, Todd, you're going to have yourself an aneurysm.
Okay, just to be fair. Okay, Chester, where are you? 1 to 10.
On Star Trek knowledge, to be honest, I would say 7 or 8.
Okay, and Albino?
Yeah, if a 10 is quoting lines and giving the name of the episode, I'd say a 7 to an 8.
Ooh, that's pretty good. You know what? I'm at a big fat 0, maybe a 1 because I do know the Star Trek characters' names. But other than that, so I'm just gonna hang back and watch the carnage. So I guess this is Chester and Todd's show. So you guys got to start flinging it here. Bring
right, cool.
First, Chester, tell them what your nickname that I came up with. What does that translate into?
Well, let me see. You said something about Chichi no Jikan.
Yeah.
Which means a little time.
Oh, really?
I don't know.
I thought it was father time.
He thought it meant little dick.
Oh, I see. You're talking about Chichi as in the dad. Okay, it's father's time, I guess. Okay. Or so you want to call me father time, meaning old.
Yes.
That's not how you would do that. You went in a very odd direction.
I tried.
All right.
Already Todd's off to a bad start.
Lost the translation.
Right.
All right. Well, before we get into it, man, I got to tell you this. To quote my favorite episode of the original series, I regret that we meet in this way. You and I are of a kind. In a different reality, I could have called you friend. But now I have to crush you utterly. because disco is crap.
That's right.
Ooh.
That's right. That's
So-
right. And to quote the original Star Trek as well, from my starting off, Spock, I'm quoting him now. Vulcan has no moon.
Ooh, good one.
Okay, here's my quote. Khan, you. That's all I know.
So go ahead, Todd. This is your challenge. So go ahead and start it out, dude. It's all you, brother.
Well, again, you want it to be the same. You're looking for like that flavor that Star Trek had for 30 years, and now all of a sudden it doesn't have that. It has a very warlike. One of them has like a very warlike flavor, and it's got some different science behind it and stuff like that. And you think, well, where's our normal Star Trek? And that's okay. I get it. This isn't like any other Star Trek, but it shouldn't be either, right? Because we've had.
Wait, I have to back up. When you say new Star Trek, are you talking about the Picard show?
He's talking about the Picard and disco.
Picard is a singular mission, a very singular focused mission, and it doesn't have any of the flavor of any of the other shows at all.
Well, first of all, Todd, let me help you out here. I shouldn't help you out, but I'm going to help you out. And you should never make assumptions. That is not what you said is not true at all. First of all, I loved Enterprise, and Enterprise has a very war standing. It's not very Star Trek in that way.
Deep Space Nine as well.
Deep Space Nine as well.
I said there was only 3 clones.
I'm just saying. I'm just telling you. And that has nothing to do with why I don't like STD and frickin' Picard, right? Has nothing to do with it. But go ahead, continue.
Oh, you don't like the woke aspect because it's a very diversified cast.
We can throw that out the window
And
if you like. We can throw that out of the conversation if you like.
Throw
I'm
it
fine
out
with
the
that.
window.
Throw it out. Yeah.
Visually, it's as stunning as any one of the movies ever made.
Visually, it's visual. Now, I will agree with you on that.
Gorgeous.
Visually, it is gorgeous.
Gorgeous. Yeah. It's true.
Yeah. And actually, some of the characters are actually really interesting.
Right.
My issue has to do with very, very crappy writing.
Oh my God.
And a flawed premises, especially with Discovery from the start.
Oh yeah. No. The writing is horrible. I mean, anyway, let him get his.
I just wanted to agree with him on the fact that the show is actually the show's beautiful.
It is beautiful. It is. Yeah.
Yeah, it is beautiful. And I agree about some of the writing has been a little weak until they really got to where they were going, because in the beginning you thought this was going to be about the Klingons and stuff like that, and then it all of a sudden became this backdrop where they didn't even really matter, and it became about the engine, right? The engine and how would they, and there was a complication with this engine and this and that, so it really switched, like it pivoted in the middle. So I agree with you that it kind of I was really hoping for, whoa, this is a really dark take on the Klingons, and then it didn't really transpire how I thought. So I would have to agree with the writing could have been better, should have been better. I'll say that.
Okay. Anything else?
I know Picard, you don't like it, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's because of the writing. It's sort of a mystery that's playing out really slow. I don't know. How many episodes of Picard have you watched?
All of them.
I actually stopped after the 4th one because I let my subscription lapse.
Oh, you use those things. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't break the law.
Did you like it up to that point?
There were elements of it that were interesting, but there's also stuff in it just doesn't. The big problem is the people who are running the shows. Well, people who are running the shows and the people who are writing for it know very little about what Star Trek actually is, and they themselves has actually come out and admitted that most of them have never really fans of the show, so they don't really understand what Star Trek is all supposed to be about.
That's good. They should have those.
There's also been massive problems behind the scenes with the shows. The show's been on the bubble of getting canceled multiple times, and the original guy who was supposed to run the show left after was supposed to run Discovery, left after the first 2 episodes. And if you watch the show, after the first 2 episodes, the show takes a real big turn, and it doesn't feel the same. So it's very obvious that they had issues about what they wanted to do with it, and going forward from those first 2 episodes, it completely changed.
It did. It was very noticeable. I agree.
It was jarringly noticeable.
Right. And I thought it was going to be really, really cool and dark and kind of like, oh crap, they woke up an ancient like ship, you know, with a different.
Oh, the time traveling AI, that thing.
No.
He's talking about the Klingon. He's talking about the Klingon sarcophagus ship, which, by the way, if
the first episode,
anything about Klingons is complete 360 about what the Klingons are all about.
Yep.
Klingons have the whole idea thing where they had this sarcophagus ship with the bodies of their ancestors all over the outside of it. The Klingons after death don't care about the body. The body means nothing. They've literally written. There's multiple episodes where they've written that where after that's where they do that ritual where they scream. Yeah. And then after that, the body they literally say, "Do what you want with the body. It doesn't matter. It's just an empty husk." Right. So that whole ship, that whole concept, which by the way was something that was added after Goyer left, goes completely contrary to Klingon society. So right there, it's ample evidence that they don't know what they're writing. Mm-hmm. So from the start, I mean, it looked awesome. Don't get me wrong; it looked cool as hell, but it made no sense.
I think we need to start from the beginning, though, before we can even get into this conversation, because we need to talk about Jar Jar Abrams, right? Because this dude and his little minion Kurtzman, JJ's a hack. Right, plain and simple, right? Because what he's really good at is he's a cinematographer, and he's great at that. He sucks at everything else, right? He can lay out cinematography, make things exciting. He's good at that. But all he's about is the giant ship flying over, ooh, or the ship warping into the middle of disaster, ooh. That's all he can do. He can't take it beyond anything more than that. And the writing is just nonsensical because, as Bob said, they brought in people who know nothing about it. The reason I started my this conversation with a quote from Spock being Vulcan has no moon was the fact that when in the first movie, which was stupid, and it's still infecting everything up until Picard. Is that he blew up Vulcan, okay, but that's assuming now that Vulcan doesn't have many other planets that they're on, because there is a frickin' space empire, right? The Republic, right? But not only did they blow up the planet, but they had frickin' Spock standing on the moon watching it be destroyed, right?
Yeah. That's an old argument from original Star Trek where Spock said that Vulcan doesn't have a moon.
He said it very clearly to Uhura.
Yeah.
Very clearly, right? So automatically, in the very beginning of the movie, they're showing me that they know nothing about Star Trek because it's stupid. And they've continued with the Romulans as well, where Romulus was destroyed, and then all of a sudden they're on their knees. They've continued this idea with Picard. Once again, the Romulan Space Empire. Please.
Yeah.
Right.
One thing I wanted to address I think it's Simnon 7. Sorry if I suck with names. Everything that had come up in STD and Picard can be justified as simply saying that it's after the timeline change in the movie. The problem is according to them, STD and Picard are not set in an alternate reality. They are set in the Prime Universe timeline. So the stuff in the movies doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's bullshit. But that's what they say, right? But continuing on
to the movies, they're not tying it to the movies at all.
No. They are tied into they are supposed to be part of the Prime timeline, which is why if they had gone with that and actually tied themselves to the new movies, a lot of these problems wouldn't exist because you've got an alternate reality. But what they didn't do that, and personally, I said this before and I've said it again. Going backwards in time, you're hamstringing yourself right from the start, especially if you want to do new things. Because you're locked into canon. You can't do that. Was one of the issues that Enterprise had, where they had to adhere very strictly to a certain canon.
Yeah.
Wasn't a lot of this whole departure with J.J. Abrams and all that? It came from the CBS Paramount like mandates where
it had to be a certain amount of difference between everything, because there was the dispute over who owns the copyright for the original series.
Right. So the movie stuff is the Abrams camp, but who is the Picard? Who's the TV stuff?
It's all Kurtzman.
It's all still Bad Robot. Kurtzman is kind of like J.J. Abrams' love child.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so continuing with that, with JJ, he has no concept, and the people around him have no concept of what Star Trek actually is.
Yeah.
Now, when with Todd here, he said that I don't want things that aren't new, and of course, Joe said something that's very important. Thank you for making my point, Joe. Every single series of Star Trek has been very different from the one before it. They're always different, Todd.
Mm-hmm. There's always a little bit of difference. Yeah,
that's a good.
It's just the universe that they exist in is a constant.
Yeah, it's called continuity.
But Bob mentioned about cancellation. Now, an average network show, granted this isn't a network, but an average network does about 2 to 3 million per episode.
Mm-hmm.
An average Star Trek viewership, and it's again different because it's streaming. You can watch it at any time, whatever. And granted, this is only within their multiple ways to be able to watch it. Like outside the US, you can watch it on Netflix, but inside the US, you have to have the subscription. Is 7 to 9 million.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but you got to remember that they also hinged their entire network subscription off of that show.
Yes,
and it did not meet what they want. And those numbers, by the way, the whole 7 million thing, that's kind of debatable depending on who you ask.
And Netflix dropped them like a hot potato as well because
yeah.
And of course, this thing about JJ and the planets things, and this is an important point actually that you're making, because JJ doesn't get science. All right. Now, when you're making a Star Wars movie or you're making say a Marvel movie, you don't need the science. These are fantasies and fantasy films, and we can our sense of reality is easily bent, right?
Then
thank you. A sense of disbelief. That's fine because that's what they are. So when he's making those kind of things, it's less troublesome. Although we're not going to get into a Star Wars conversation because that would, oh my God. So that's not as big a problem when he has planets that can be seen from atmospheres, and we can see planets right next to it. It's stupid, but it's okay because it's a fantasy. Star Trek is true science fiction, however, right? And then when you take someone who doesn't understand science at all and have them in charge of what's being written, you come into a real big problem when it comes to Star Trek, because one of the main consistencies, even though each series is different, is the fact that there is a basis of science fiction. The other premise that Roddenberry put in place that is essential to Star Trek is that humanity has gotten past all of its hangups.
Right.
Humanity has improved itself to a utopian state, and it is trying to explore the universe and bring its sense of utopia and a proper life that doesn't have all the drug troubles and wars and all that stuff to other people. That's the premise, and these guys don't understand it because they want everything to be boom boom. Psh, psh, psh. That's all they care about. They have the Michael Bay syndrome, right?
Yeah, I've heard an interview with JJ and Kurtzman, and they basically weren't even shy about it. They said they wanted to turn Star Trek into Star Wars.
Yeah.
And he said they even met with George Lucas and got his blessing. So, I know at least the film franchise, I haven't seen any of the TV stuff. It's basically, they're just bringing, like Indiana Jones and Star Wars into the franchise and just shoehorning, those ideas or, that tonality into a Star Trek, universe.
That was a good way to put it. Yeah, they did do that with the tonality of it. And it was just, whatever. Those, I didn't really come here to back up those movies because they were garbage.
Yeah, well, I understand, and I haven't even got to STD yet, right? I haven't even got there yet. I get your point, right? But the problem is, once we come into STD and of course Picard, now the conversation, which is connected to everything I've said, now we have more trouble, right? Now I will openly admit that Picard, the acting in Picard is better. It
Yes.
certainly is.
Yes, I agree.
The story is still convoluted, and it's still extremely anti Star Trek. It's very anti Picard, right? Picard, and it's a complete. Well, okay, I'll just finish my comment because Picard is he's a professional diplomat. That's what he is, right? He's
Mhm.
really good at it. And you take this professional diplomat, he's put in a situation that he's constantly walking behind women. He's being yelled at by women every episode and chastised for his existence. And he is incapable of any diplomatic action. They actually had the dude walk into a freaking town, sit down at a bar, rip a sign off the wall. It's the opposite of what Picard would do. Everything they're doing is not what Picard has been established to
But they
be.
gave you that backstory that he failed. They gave you that.
Yeah, but it's
there.
more than that, dude.
It's
They
who
even
the character is. The character isn't that. Like I was
Right.
the thing
But
is, like Next Gen was. It's like Captain Kirk. It's that generation done like better. It's like more evolved. So Picard was like the more evolved Kirk. You know, where
Yeah.
Kirk was still like, I'll take care of this with my fists. You know, and I'll fight my way out of it if need.
Right. Actually,
Yeah,
you're
but see-
right. But they
Picard-
But that's-
prefaced it. They prefaced it with him having failed at his last mission. You know.
Yeah,
which
but
was
but it's still convoluted in this fact. He starts off in the first episode where he's sitting there thinking about Data. He's always thinking about Data because they want to link it in. He didn't like Data. He's never cared for Data. He tolerates Data. Then they have him with these little kids and stuff. He hates children. It's freaking Picard, dude. And you know, when you're talking about some of these other concepts, like what they did in STD, that is all about, you know, war fronting, and that's not really Star Wars, although they've done it before. So I don't have a problem with them showing that side of it either. It would be interesting if done well. But the writing in that show is spectacularly bad. It's outrageous. They how many points? I can't even count them. How many times do they show something and then never follow it up? Right. Sometimes the acting on that show, STD, it reminds me of a community college production. Right. It's so laughably bad, dude. It's so bad. So yeah, it's beautiful. But I mean, come on. There's actually a scene where there you have the supposed Spock and his out of nowhere half sister. How did that happen? We know his family history really well. So where did this Michael Burnham come from?
And the whole storyline behind that character too, and why we don't know about her is
dumb.
Ridiculous. It's
ridiculous. It is ridiculous.
I agree
But
with that.
they actually had a scene, Todd, where Spock, freaking Spock, is sitting there saying, "I love science," and then another crazy lady is like, "Yay, math!" Are you kidding me, dude?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's this is the biggest problem that I think a lot of people have with it is how disrespectful to canon it is. It completely changes things, but it doesn't even come up with a good reason for why they're changing things. It's just doing it because they can. And it comes off awful. It's absolutely ridiculous. The reason why no one has ever heard about this spore drive, the reason why no one has ever heard of Michael Burnham, the reason why all this happened is it's stupid because it's secret and we don't want people to know about it. So Spock is never going to tell anybody about his sister, all the people that know about her. And then the thing is, here's the thing: when the first 2 episodes of that show, I was really, really on board, man. Because I was really on board with the idea of this character that she was playing, who was so arrogant and in her abilities and the way she looked at everybody. She makes a massive mistake in the very first episode.
She's a villain,
and you see, she is. Well, she's very, very. She thinks she's better than everybody, which is why in the first episode she's going around doing everybody's job and literally Doug Jones's character telling like, listen, hey, he like tells her like, back off. This is my station. This is my job. And then when she talks her captain into letting her go examine that sarcophagus ship, what does Michelle Yeoh say to her? She says, "Do a flyby, nothing more. You observe, and you leave." What does she do? She gets out there. I'm gonna land on the ship and take a look around.
Right, and she walks around.
And she is the match that lights the war.
Right.
Like the fuse that starts the war. She starts an intergalactic war because she's arrogant. And then when she goes back and she's talking to she instead of bringing her captain in, having her talk to Sarek with her so that she can explain this. No, what does she do? She starts a mutiny. She compounds her error. And
she's a villain.
Here's the thing. That's what's interesting about the character is she screws up so badly. There's no way she can fix it. And then so you got this person who's deeply flawed and is going to have to go through the rest of their life trying to make up for something that they cannot make up for because the war that she causes literally kills millions. But what do? At the end of the season, big red reset button. Oh, she's completely forgiven.
Yep.
Here you go. You get not only are you not going to prison, you're reinstated and you're back at your original rank. So now you're the first officer on the Discovery.
And then we get 7 points of light.
That is stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very stupid. And just to catch what you said real quick, Eric, oh, geez, it's the same. Luke had a character arc argument. Just a quick little thing that came to my head. I just, you guys will kind of kill me for doing this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Tangent. Luke, of course, the word itself means light, ultimately, right? And of course, if we look at the word light, then it takes us back to the sun. And of course, if we look at the sun, it talks about God, right? But the point of him is his name, Luke, was used because it represents a new hope. No. But Ray, however, now what does Ray mean? Now, Ray, of course, means king, taking it back to the Latin of Rex. But if we go back further with the name Ray, what we see is, of course, it means God, because it, Amen, Ra, Amun Ra, Horus Ray, etc., etc. And of course, Ra itself, meaning the sun, meaning God. So what have they done with this? They showed us Luke. His name was subtle. It was representing a light that is coming, a new hope. Ray is God. We should have seen it from the beginning. Sorry.
Okay. Sorry. And to get to the whole thing where the ideological storylines that they're pushing in here, the SJW agenda. I can watch a movie and not be bothered by that as long as it is written well. Season 2 is just stupid.
Very stupid.
Season 2 is just ridiculously pumped full of it. It's to the point where the show suffers tremendously because of it. The whole thing with the Klingon woman, you're going to give her a doomsday weapon? Are you kidding me? To take over the Klingon Empire? I am the mother now. Give me a break, man. Come on.
And did you know, Bob, that light travels instantly across the entire universe? Did you know that?
Apparently,
yeah. I mean, the thing is, Todd, we can tear apart each episode. It's so inane, dude.
Yeah.
The writing is shockingly bad, and I can't understand how it can be that bad.
It's intentional because they don't care about it. That's the only way you can explain it. The very first episode of season 2, when Pike comes on board and Burnham dresses him down in front of the crew. Right. The very second that happens, he should have been like, ready room right now. And as soon as she goes there, he should have laid the law down on her. He says, you do not disrespect the chain of command like that. You do that again, you're going to wind up back in prison. Okay. There was an episode of Next Generation where Worf didn't even do a tenth of that. Basically, Worf he was frustrated because they were in a holding pattern. And finally they were given an order to do something. And when Data was in charge, and he said, finally, and Data says, ready room, let's go. And then he gives him a yeah,
you're right. I remember
dresses him down for it. He says,
yeah, he does.
You cannot disrespect the chain of command like that. And Worf, being the well-written character he says, you know what? You're right. I'm sorry. I hope this doesn't affect our friendship. Burnham does that multiple times in season 2.
She does.
Pike gets his balls cut off multiple times by multiple people.
Yeah, and Picard is constantly getting his balls cut off, constantly.
So as far as the social justice aspect of it, I can deal with a movie that has that in there, dude. I went and saw friggin' Knives Out, and I thought it was awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
But in this show, it is so blatant, and it's like hitting you with a freaking hammer.
It's virulent.
But
Virulent.
what you're saying about Picard, though, I mean, Picard's not, essentially, yeah, he's the captain of the ship, but this isn't Starfleet. So
The thing is, though, is that the way Picard is acting is completely contradictory to who Picard has always been.
That's right. It's almost as if he has Alzheimer's and he's been replaced by another entity.
Yeah.
Now that would be a twist. I might
Now,
take that.
the thing and here's the thing: the people who are the actors in the show, I don't blame them for any of this. Okay. And the character of Michael Burnham could have been a really good character. Like I said, the first 2 episodes of the show, I thought it was great.
right.
I was really looking forward to watching a show about this person who spends the rest of their life trying to make up for something that can't be made up for. But in season 1, but then they completely reset that in season 1, and then in season 2, because they have taken the show, unlike the other shows, which is an ensemble show where there is no real main character. She's the main character of this show, so everything has to revolve around her. And to do that, you have to make her relevant to everything. And their way of making her relevant to everything is she's better at everything than everybody.
She's a superior human that's capable of everything.
Like literally, the very first episode, they're like, "We've got these special experimental ships. Oh, by the way, I was the test pilot for all these things." Like, you were the test pilot for these things when you were in prison?
Yeah. And keep in mind, Todd, we haven't even touched on the fact of the whole progressivism.
That's what I was going to say. Is this kind of like what's happening with, like Picard is what's happening with Doctor Who, where it's kind of becoming more like agenda.
Literally,
SJW.
They literally said that the storyline of Picard was going to tackle the element of Trump.
Yep.
And as soon as they said that, I was like, I'm out.
And the SJW elements of this, why I usually prefer to say progressivism, because we have found out in the past couple of years that SJWism is not restricted to one particular group. Now,
no, it's not.
But progressivism is what we're talking about here, and the simple fact. Well, sure. But if we do delve into that, now we come into a whole nother basket of problems. I almost said deplorables, but I resisted. Or it maybe resistance is futile. But the thing is, Michael Burnham's character is the ultra female to put all the men in her place. That's exactly in their place. That's exactly what she's there for. That's her whole purpose, right? Every time they have an opportunity, they try to put a woman in a position of doing the correct thing and a man being a fool. They did it over and over. Him mentioning Pike is a good example. I kind of thought the character was a little bit interesting, actually, but they ruined it because of their premise, right?
Yep.
I don't have any problem with Michelle Yeoh. I kind of like that actress.
That was another element. Sorry to interrupt you, but that was another element of the show that really pissed me off. Is they pushed Michelle Yeoh and Jason Isaacs as the stars of that show, and then they pull a friggin' bait and switch, and they're gone per season.
Right. Yeah, and it's a shame because she would have been really good. But
what was that, Art?
I was saying, where's the diversity?
No, exactly. Where is it? But then continue on with their writing with Michael Burnham, which we haven't even brought this up. Why is she called Michael? Why isn't she Michelle?
Because it's non-binary gender.
Yeah, no, I understand what it is, but it's stupid.
Alex Kurtzman had some. I forget what he called it, but it was some mantra about making lead characters female and then giving them male names.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is dumb. I mean, once again, this whole progressivism in itself is misogyny. Yeah. It is the most dangerous and negatively affecting thing toward women that I've ever seen. And it's supposed to be done in the name of women, but it's clearly hurting them. Taking away femininity from women, that's not a pro-women, that's anti-woman, right? And everything they do is very anti-woman. Women can't be strong on their own. They have to be male-like. Really? Yeah.
And not only
this is misogyny.
But as far as this show is concerned, Albino actually made a good point here that he said Pike is the character that they were like, we want him to have a show of his own.
Yes.
Because when they're not cutting his balls off, he's the most interesting character on the show.
Correct.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Very
Absolutely
true.
the most interesting character.
And he is getting his own show, from what I understand.
Well, they don't know. They're saying maybe. So,
Yeah.
like I said, because like the whole thing we were talking earlier about the whole thing about the ratings. The reason why a lot of people are saying that the ratings are BS is because it's a streaming service. They don't release ratings like normal. What they go by is by how many people bought into the service and left afterward. But that's deceptive. So
yeah, and just even to wrap up STD, Todd, and how bad the writing and how bad the acting has been in this in that show. In the ending, the cliffhanger to season 2 coming into season 3 here, they defeated the great super time traveling AI that's going to destroy the universe, and we won't even get into how many freaking plot holes they left across the season in regarding that character. But they've already defeated him. He's done. And what do? They jump into the warp anyway. Why? Because they knew that the writers have actually come forward and they finally admitted this. They realized they hamstrung themselves by setting the show in the past. So they're like, we got to take this thing into the future.
Right.
Yeah, but it's dumb.
The reason is dumb, but
it is. Yeah. But they make a lot of decisions like this, Todd. From J.J. Abrams all the way through Kurtzman, they keep making these bad decisions and they write themselves into a corner, and then they come up with inane ways to get out of it. This is the problem. I touched a little bit on the progressivism, but that's not even important. We don't even need to get into that because that is toxic on its own. Just the horrible writing, the fact that it has nothing to do with Star Trek, and the acting is deplorable, particularly in STD. It's failing because it's bad.
Yeah, and let's put it this way. I can sum up how little these people truly understand Star Trek with one sentence. They were talking about, in regards to Picard, that they were going to have the Romulans be the creators of the Borg. If you know anything about the Borg, that is the stupidest statement you could possibly make. Right. Borg have existed for thousands of years.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, it is a name. Yep. That's what's happening in Picard, of course.
And those are the writers of Picard, and they were like, we don't understand why everybody's getting mad at us about this. And I'm like, because you don't know shit.
Because they're not self-aware. That's clear. But I hope, Todd, that you kind of are seeing the point of view that I and Bob as well are coming from on this.
No, I like your points. No, I don't disagree with your points. By the way, I don't.
And here's the thing. I'll say this to you, Todd. If you like the show, more power to you, man. I'm glad you found something that you like. But the reason why so many people, especially old school Star Trek fans, don't like it is because it is literally a complete 360 of everything that Gene Roddenberry intended for Star Trek to be.
That's right.
And the writing is just bad. Like I said, I can watch a movie with identity politics in it and not have a problem with it as long as the movie doesn't suck. As long as it's well written, I can deal with a lot of things, man. But when it is just like we said, that element of these two shows is the least of the problems. It's just not well written. They just don't understand Star Trek. It's worse than friggin' Rian Johnson's handling of Star Wars.
Yeah. And he, not only with Rian Johnson in Star Wars, not only does he know Star Wars, he refused to go and learn about Star Wars because he thought it would taint his approach. These are his words, not mine.
Yeah.
Right. And real quick, Blue Samurai, I don't believe we know how the Borg began.
The Borg, the way that Q explains it is the Borg were similar to the Federation at one point, but became so enamored with the idea of adding to their own collectiveness and diversity that they lost their humanity in the process. They lost what made them. So they became machines. And Skull Nasher, dude, I should have said 180, not 360. I get you.
Yeah, 180. Right.
But but other than that, the Borg are a complete mystery.
Yeah. So, that's great. That's a piece of information I didn't have.
You know what? It's funny because as far as just writing in general, like things can be mysteries and just leave them mysteries.
Oh yeah.
There's always these writers that think that they're more clever than the content. Like, oh, we're going to come up with a reason. We're going to come up with a reason why Jedi. We're going to create metachlorians. We're gonna create a reason why the Highlander, is immortal. He's an alien. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think the mystery sometimes is better than the explanation. Like, just leave some things left.
Kind of like Marvel, right?
Yeah, like Wolverine. I never wanted to know Wolverine's true origin.
Yeah, it's more fun, I think, to speculate and then just keep teasing new things like, oh, he fought in the Second World War. Oh, he was a samurai or whatever, whatever the hell it is. Like, where did he get that information from? Oh, maybe he's older than we thought he was, like all these things, instead of spoon feeding things and go, oh, this is what happened. The Borgs were a construct of this or created by that. And, it's my problem with Marvel Comics and like the X-Men, and most writers did this with other franchise too, where eventually all the characters are connected with the other characters. Like they're all like somehow related, or some kind of situation unified them in some way. It's like, no, man. Like I'm not related to Chester at all. I've never even met him. You know what I mean? Like Bob just came on the chat. I've seen him in the chat room. Now he's on the show. You know what I mean? Like some things, there's no deeper connection. We just met. The situation is what it is. But then these writers think that they're more clever, and then they go, oh, you know what? I have a story of how Chester and Art might have, found each other before Pontificators.
It was love at first sight.
And they think they're more clever than the mystery. And I just think the mystery is a lot of fun.
And Seminon just made a good point about look what they just did to Doctor Who.
Oh my God!
They thought they were going to be smart, and they would be able to shoehorn some of this ideology, this identitarianism that they wanted in there, and they completely took a crap on 60 years of story.
Yeah, that's why I brought that up earlier, because that's what I heard, because there's a lot of people talking about Picard and Doctor Who, and they're making kind of the same connections, that there is progressivism or SJWism or whatever that's coming into it. An ism is coming in and kind of tainting it. But I'll just tell you, from an insider creative point of view, this is the one thing I know exists, but I always scratch my head. Like, there's so many people that know Star Trek. There's so many people that know these IPs. They've lived them. They love them. They could write great stories. Those guys don't get these jobs. That's what boggles my mind, that it becomes nepotism, or it's like they just say that Robot as a company can do no harm. So then under the umbrella, let's give them not only Star Wars, but let's give them Star Trek, and let's give them the DCU. You know what I mean? Like, why one entity so much and being completely undeserved? Like, what have you done? You haven't done anything.
Most of the people who are true fans of things, they have they're the people that go out here and start families and take other avenues. Well, the people that want to get into the entertainment industry are usually the people that shouldn't be in the entertainment industry.
Yeah, but I know people in the industry that know the stuff backwards and forwards, Bob.
Right.
But they still
I actually have a little bit of an answer to that, actually. But before I do that, just so you all know, when Art and I first met, our beards entangled, and it was love at first sight.
Yikes.
Okay. Okay. No, actually, there were some actually older and experienced writers that were brought in for STD, but they were fired. Yeah, they were pushed out because they were too old, they were too male, and their attitude wasn't appropriate for what Kurtzman wanted, right? So we could potentially hit something good. And there's another thing to keep in mind with this, Todd, and anyone else who's listening who agrees. When STD was announced, I was excited.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so was
I wanted to see a new Star Trek. I'd been waiting so long. I was not happy that they canceled Enterprise. I liked Enterprise a lot. And then they got rid of it. It might even be one of my favorite Star Trek. And then we had a new one coming. I was like, yes, finally, man. And I was so excited about it. So don't think this is someone coming at it like, no, I'm going to hate it from the beginning. I don't want. It's nothing like that.
Star Trek, in my personal
opinion,
belongs on television, not in the theater.
Yeah, of course, that's true. Because I don't even most of the movies are not very good. But I mean, my point is that this was a desperation for more Star Trek. We really want more Star Trek. So and we're rebelling against what they're doing because of the toxic hate of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Does this come from any of the Sony or the CBS Paramount stuff, like that they got to change these IPs, or what is the
The
TV
25% rule. Yeah.
and
No, it's
franchise fall under?
It's certain elements have to be at least 25% different. Obviously, people can't be, because they're people. You can't. Characters can be used, but like ships and locations and things like that. It's the reason why the Enterprise and Discovery looks as different as it does.
Yeah, 25% different.
It's just familiar, and it's familiar enough to recognize, oh, that's the Enterprise. But there's enough difference to where it's it's not infringing upon the original copyright.
I guess what I'm asking is which side is which is the CBS side and which side is the Paramount side? Like
it's not CBS and Paramount. It's CBS, Paramount, and the people who bought the Desilu estate.
Okay.
Well, do keep in mind they are now becoming one again.
Yeah, they're on the verge of like fixing this thing forever. So.
Well, that's what I heard, because I know that like JJ, one of the things that I think he said about Star Wars and maybe Star Trek is that he doesn't even want to get involved with these franchises unless he can change them, because he wants a piece of the licensing. You know what I mean? So he wants a piece of like these new characters. So even though it's Captain Kirk, it's his Captain Kirk. You know what I mean? It's not, the TV series Captain Kirk. So a lot of these guys, like I know Bad Robot's going in there, and they're pretty much putting pressure on these entities that are hiring them to do these things. So do you think that some of the changes is just coming across so that JJ and Bad Robot can say that they own or partially own these characters?
Yeah, there's something. I remember reading an article where he talked about that a little bit. It's something to do with it's kind of like how if you create a character in DC, even though DC owns it, the creator gets like a stipend if it's used in certain other mediums and things like that. It's something along that lines. Like if whatever JJ creates that's unique to what he the properties that he makes, he gets a little bit of a kickback if they're used in something else.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
because what I heard is that like he was see, I don't know what the entities are, but he was upset at either CBS or Paramount when because he advised them when he took over the Star Trek franchise that he didn't want old Trek to compete with new Trek. Like he didn't want any of the toys, he didn't want any of the memorabilia or any of that stuff to be out there for sale, because he was like, it's competing against his. And that, to me, when I read that, it seemed like he didn't have faith in his own, that it couldn't compete against original Trek.
Yeah. It's
Well,
there's a bunch of stuff going on there.
Yeah, well, of course, there's that part of it going on, and that's not necessarily a problem. We saw the same thing go on with Sony Spider-Man, right? The reason why they have like things like, say, a black MJ, which they never called her, they've never made her to be the exact MJ. The reason they did that was because if they used the actual MJ, his wife or future wife, then they would have to give monies and stuff over to Disney, or Disney could use it. So there are these decisions that take place. There are, and sometimes they can be a bit annoying.
Right, because I was thinking that these things are leading into like consumer confusion, because there's all these different versions that are happening, and then creatively they can justify it. They can go, well, we can't get the rights, and we want to own MJ, so we're going to create our own. But there's still the original that exists. So then whoever's a fan of Spider-Man, or anybody that's coming in and wants to understand the Spider-Man mythology and picks up a comic, they're like, this is not the Marvel Universe MJ. So we're starting to get into these places where we're creating a lot of confusion in the marketplace within one entity. You know what I mean? Within like Star Trek alone, there's division, and there's you know what I mean? There's competitive, like they're competing against themselves in a weird, strange way.
Yeah.
I
That's a
think
fair point.
that's part of like the destruction that we're having too, because, like when you can mandate these things, like I said earlier, when they're financial, they can justify any of these things. You know what I mean? When Bad Robot can come in and whoever else is in their camp and say, if we change things fundamentally 25%, then we can have a stake in ownership. So then their agenda now is to shit on the past. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Because then they can make money, and the further they can depart from it, then the more original it seems, and the more that they can claim it as their own. It's kind of, I think in long term, it's defeating the purpose and it's shitting on the fan base. But if you think about it short term from their own creative point of view, it's a good decision to make. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
From a business standpoint.
It is. It's true. And of course, then agenda also comes in. And this is where the problem really is, because I think most of us seeing something different, understanding the economic aspects of it, it's not that big a deal. But the agenda that is also part of the process is the problem, right?
Well,
like
take wife, the Me Too leader, or one of the.
Well, then it's clearly attached, and sometimes it's more subtle than that. For instance, this isn't necessarily an agenda-driven thing, but talking about things wanting to be different so you can own the property. It shows you how little they understand about Star Trek, because when in the first movies from JJ, they basically made Kirk this wild rebel that's uncontrollable and stuff like that. And this is kind of the general conception of people who don't know Star Trek. Kirk is nothing like that. The fact that he leads with his fist is not actually accurate. He's actually a pretty good captain. Now, being a diplomat, Picard was certainly more sophisticated, but Captain Kirk is not what people think he is.
No. When I said, I'm just defending my point of view. When it came down to it, he was still kind of that generation that would roll up his sleeves and get physical.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. But JJ, not understanding the subtleties of Kirk and his writers and such, they gave us a Kirk that is not actually Kirk at all. Now, I understand the whole 25% different thing because of the contracts and such, and bringing in the point that JJ wants to make money on his own. But that is a radical departure. That's not 25%. That's 180%. It's just a lack of understanding of characters, even with all the things understood. Take into account that, okay, there's money to be made here. All right, fine. There's an agenda involved there. Okay, fine. When we take in all these categories of things that are affecting, that we have to deal with and put aside to enjoy the thing, even after all that is done, it's badly written. The story doesn't make any sense. It's full of plot holes, and particularly with STD, the acting is absolutely atrocious. It is unacceptable from a Hollywood point of view, let alone Star Trek.
Yeah. Well, did you like that JJ and the bad reboot guys turned Spock into a physical character? Like he actually beats people up and gets into fights and stuff?
Yeah, and that's, once again, it's not a little different. It's a 180, as Bob had said, right? Because, Spock in the original series, he had moments where he had to become physical, but it was always controlled. This Quinto, which is really sad, because I think Quinto looks the part wonderfully. He's a good actor too, but he is not playing a Vulcan. He's playing this thing that is boiling underneath the surface, that is nothing but emotion. Whereas the Vulcans have gone beyond that. They are in complete control of their emotion. And every time you saw Spock act physically, it was always controlled, concise, and successful. But it wasn't anger. And Quinto's character is nothing but
angry. Yeah. The thing is, like, I think the older, like more contemporary writing, they want to have shades of gray. They want the characters to seem more dimensional, because the older stuff, it was kind of like you understood the characters. They were this one thing. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, when you have an ensemble, each one of those characters can't be too multifaceted. Every one of those characters has to kind of have one thing. And then because the one thing the one character has, the other one doesn't. So the thing I always thought was the best idea of Star Trek, and what I think is the best part of Trek at its inception, was those three characters. It's Bones, Spock, and the captain, because you have emotion, you have logic. You have a character that's emotional, like he's like, this is the humanist thing to do. And then you have one guy that's like, this is pure logic. And then you have a guy that's well-rounded enough and human enough that he can see both sides and that he can take under advisement. So if you think about the perfect kind of like team that would lead the Enterprise, that's a really well-rounded group of main characters. And each one of those characters isn't necessarily well-rounded or has gray areas or anything like that. They pretty much are those characters consistently. And I think that modern writing kind of gets into these like nuances or these gray areas. It's like, well, why can't we make Spock more relatable? Why can't we get into that he's a half-breed and that he's been made fun of all his life, and that's the reason why this human aspect comes out. But the human aspect is only anger. You know what I mean? It's none of these other things. It's just rage.
Yeah. And of course, it's a complete lack of understanding of the alien when it comes to writing. Right.
Yeah. But also, how I would write it is I would write it like, if you want that to be his origin, but that then as an adult, he is completely in control of his emotions, but he has this past that no other Vulcan had to go through. So it's okay to set it up that way, but just don't play it out that way that, that he can, you know what I mean? Like he can get irate and get pissed off and then come at, doesn't he come at Kirk in the movie? Like
he almost kills him.
Several times, yes.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Like literally from the beginning, when they start with him as a kid, it's all about him being angry.
Right. And he even goes after the captain, which, by the way, like if you did that in any kind of command, like if you were out on a destroyer or you were you would be gone, man. That would be it.
But see, there's another element going on here that we haven't even covered, right? And there's a lot of hacks in Hollywood that are doing this these days. It's not just JJ. See, in the original Star Trek, you had a scene where they had this episode where there were these things called tribbles, you see. And people like that episode, so we got to put a tribble in here. Oh, not only do we have to have a tribble in here, tribbles need to save the day, right? This kind of, that was in the original, let's use that. They call it fan service, but it's just idiocy. It's the
wrong kind of fan service, is what it is.
Yeah. It's like what was the Star Wars where, oh my gosh, the prequel Star Wars that they just made, where they had all the fans. Yeah.
You mean
Rogue One?
Yeah,
Rogue One.
Yeah, like it really felt shoehorned in. Like the best parts of like Rogue One was the
Vader thing,
the Vader stuff, but it really felt like it was just like shoehorned in.
The thing I thought was shoehorned in was when they ran into the Walrus Man and the Doctor from the original Cantina.
Yeah.
So you watch yourself.
It doesn't even make sense from a timeline standpoint.
No, it doesn't.
But they do that a lot, though. They do that a lot, and this is just the part of the hackery of modern Hollywood, right?
Well, I was watching the show on Star Trek, the movie, and this is case in point, man. You talk about writing. Chester. I'm just going to help you. I'm just going to help illustrate your point. And this is the epitome of bad writing and fan service, where in the Wrath of Khan with what's the guy
Ricardo Montalban.
No, the remake.
Benedict
Cumberbatch, and where Cumberbatch says, and it's supposed to have like all this dramatic and this emotional like aspects, and he goes, I'm Khan, and it's like he says it to Kirk and the crew like they're supposed to go, oh, it's Khan, but they're saying it just for us.
Yes.
And the funny thing is most of the people who of this generation heard that and went, yeah, and
yeah, they don't even know who he is either. So it's weird fan service that doesn't even make dramatic sense. Like it's like said in such a dramatic way, and then you realize, well, nobody in this story knows who this guy is. Only we do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's said like it's like breaking the, what they call it, the fourth wall, and he's talking just to the fan, just to the Star Trek fan. But I guarantee you, every Star Trek fan is like, this is bullshit. Like, I'm not even a Star Trek fan, and I was like, this is bullshit, man. What is this? Ferris Bueller's Day Off? Like, he's going to break the fourth wall and talk directly to us?
And you know, they could have easily done that correctly, right? I mean, there's more plots to the holes to that beyond just that point. You also have the point that he put all his people in missiles, and they've been there for how long? And no one disposed of them or nothing like that, right? But anyway,
that's weird.
It is weird, but they could have fixed it really simply. The villain guy, I can't remember the character's name, but they could have had that
Admiral Marcus.
Marcus, okay, thank you. That he came across Khan's ship, found them, and then recruited them. It's a change from the original, but that's okay. It could have been an interesting little twist on the story. It would have taken what, 3 minutes of screen time to set that up, right? And they could have done it as a reveal later, where he's coming from and why he's working for Marcus. Simple solution, right? Simple solution. But no, that's not how they went about it. It has to be just laid out in this stupid way where no one even knows who he is. He has no importance. He's not valuable. And that's just one example. The plot holes in these movies are just endless, dude.
Yeah, endless. What's happening is, and I'm not trying to get sympathy for like JJ, but like with the first Star Wars that he did, Force Awakens, that guy had no time to do that. Like, when he got the job, it was already, here's the deadline. And the thing is, there was already people that were hired before him that were supposed to write these scripts and do all this stuff. So one of the problems is, like, even with Rian Johnson, I think these scripts are first drafts, and then they're kind of edited on the fly.
With Johnson, that's not the case.
I heard that he was creating and changing as they were going along.
From what my understanding is, that he was involved in the writing of it from the start.
He did write it from the start, but what I'm saying is that it was still like his first draft. And so usually there's 2 to 3 drafts that go through so that they can find these problems that we're pointing out. But what I think is happening is that these corporations are mandating this is when this movie has to come out, for the fourth quarter, investors. And so then they're mandating, here's the deadline, here's the budget, now go do it. But I remember reading, and I think I saw some like behind the scenes stuff, that Rian Johnson was making stuff up and changing things on the fly. So he probably had a first draft, but I don't think there was a clear second draft, and I don't think there was a third. And I know for a fact that last J.J. Abrams Star Wars movie, there wasn't really a coherent.
There wasn't a script at all. They had like a couple of scenes, and that was it. They wrote that sucker literally on the fly.
That was triage.
Like something for like $200,000 or whatever, $200 million, and then just go, well, we're gonna wing it.
Yeah, that was one of the big problems with the DC movies. Is the studio got involved and basically was like, this movie has to be done in this amount of time. It has to meet these requirements. Can't be longer than 2 hours. They put all these handcuffs on the creative team and then went go.
Yeah.
And the third movie here that just came out, that was complete triage from J.J. Abrams. But the thing is, the real root of the problem of what you're saying, Art, if we go back to the very beginning, they clearly had no plan for their trilogy.
Oh yeah,
None.
yeah. There was no person to oversee and plot a trilogy. No, I mean, you're completely right. But I'm just saying that even when they were doing these movies, they didn't have second or third drafts. And the Star Trek movies, I almost guarantee you they were the same. Because they were the same people working on these. They were the bad reboot guys. So I bet you these were first drafts of a screenplay.
Yeah, and they're like Albino just said that. I read that's the interview I was talking about, where Rian Johnson bragged that he wrote one draft for the Left Jedi script, and then that's what they used to film it with.
Yeah, he did say that. Yeah. with the whole thing, I mean, just think of the raw arrogance of the situation, though, right? Disney gets a hold of the largest IP in history, right? One of the most beloved things to the point that there are people who actually created their own freaking Jedi religion. That's how impactful this has been on culture across the planet, right? They get a hold of this, and what do? They're going to throw out a series of movies, and they don't even bother to think of how they're going to tell their story. Don't even care. That is the height of arrogance, right?
Yeah.
Because they disregard everything because they are better, they are smarter, and they're going to educate you, you stupid monkey. Right?
Yeah. The thing is, they're paying the price because right now Star Wars is worth zip. It's worth zero. But nobody's buying the product. Nobody cares. So you bought this thing for a bunch of money and you just killed even the diehard fans' their enthusiasm for these IPs. And that's a real shame. Because basically you bought it and destroyed it, and they bought Fox. They're going to destroy Fox. They're just going to destroy all the stuff. And this is the problem too. It's then DC's getting in bed with bad reboot.
They are.
Haven't you seen the writing on the wall?
Well, see, that's the thing, though, man. I think and bringing this back to Star Trek, I think that's one of the major problems with Star Trek is that the powers that be at Paramount and CBS are saying we want these shows to have certain beats. You have this is your budget, this is your time frame. We want these shows to have these certain beats, and anybody that comes in that goes contrary to that, like we said, they brought in some original Star Trek people and they got rid of them immediately.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's a major part of the problem with with those two shows.
Yeah.
Is they're not bringing in people who understand what these shows and these franchises are. They're bringing in people that are going to give that are going to follow the beats and the elements and put the elements in that they want.
Right. And one of the top of the line ideas or mandates is we need more diversity. You're already going, your emphasis is in the wrong place. This should come out of story. This should be organic. This shouldn't be shoehorned in or mandated in because it's never going to resonate and it's never going to feel authentic. It's going to feel forced and phony. And that's the problem when you have non-creative people mandating to creative people agendas, period.
That's right.
It's just
real quick though, what do you think, Albino? I saw what you said, man.
That's funny. No, I think you guys are on point. It all comes back to what you had mentioned earlier about, I think Art was the one who mentioned it, that there was no plan for the sequel trilogy. Kathleen Kennedy didn't admit it at the time, but she has since admitted it a few times in a few different interviews. So she is on the record as saying there was no plan. She went to JJ, and he has now said after the release and subsequent disappointing box office of Rise of Skywalker that the only direction he got from Kathleen Kennedy back in 2012 was your lead has to be female and you have to kill off Luke Skywalker. And now go do whatever you want.
Yeah, and then Albano actually brought that up because in an interview that Trevorrow has done recently, he said that he insisted on Luke Skywalker surviving. He wanted Luke Skywalker to survive, and
that's why he walked. Yeah,
and they said no, and that's why he walked.
Yep.
Yeah, it is. And on top of all of that nonsense that is obviously agenda from the beginning, the hackery continues, right? Because J.J. Abrams is constantly copying other people's stuff and calling it homage. Freaking Kurtzman ripped off the Todagrig game directly.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's a huge one.
He can't even create his own damn story.
Dude, just follow the whole trajectory of their careers, man. It's all been lifted. There's nothing that's completely original in any of their filmography.
True. Yeah. Very true. But you know what, Art? This is supposed to be a battle between I and Todd, and Todd is thoroughly throttled because he hasn't spoken in an hour. So
yeah, I'm gonna give Todd a little bit of love here, man. Here's the things that I think Disco got right. I think the first 2 episodes were good. They set up even with the flaws that are in there. I still thought they were good. They set up an interesting character. Unfortunately, they didn't follow through with it. Pike was awesome when he wasn't getting his balls cut off. Some of the cast is actually really good. Doug Jones is awesome.
Yes.
Okay, and the show's beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous.
It is. And there was an episode with the tall blue guy. I can't remember his name, where they went to his home planet and his the 2 species there on his planet. That was very Star Trek-y. I like that. I like that episode. There was one other episode I liked too. So there were a couple things to like, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So it's not all bad. And we do, and I would love for them to course correct this thing in season 3 and actually give us a really, really good show. So at least you think that we're just completely hating on it.
Yeah, but still,
that's
the
not
problem
the
is
case.
the problem is, Bob. My point was that it's been an hour and Todd hadn't said a damn word.
And by the way, the
You're
character's
not
name is
even
Saru
talking
Kennedy.
about Star Trek. You've been talking about Star Wars.
Yeah.
It's all connected because it's
you've been
frickin'
talking about
Jar
Bad
Jar.
Robot. Yeah,
That's right, because that's the exact frickin' point of infection.
Because it all comes back to J.J. Abrams, basically.
All right, Todd, you got the floor. We'll all be quiet.
No, it's all right. I got to get going actually.
All right, victory. There you go.
I
Sorry,
knew
it took.
a...
Sorry, it took 2 weeks, folks. I did get pulled off it last week. It was business, but it's all right. Maybe Todd will think twice before challenging me in the future.
I didn't disagree with your points, but the show got a 3rd season.
It did.
Picard got 3 seasons. It got signed for
Well,
3, so.
it's supposedly
Why
gonna
is
get
that?
3 seasons. We'll see.
Why is that?
Okay, you tell me.
I think it's because of agenda. It's the same thing with Doctor Who. It keep giving them seasons, even though people are hating it and hating it and hating it.
Yeah.
And of course, they just had the final episodes of the season 2 or 3 for this new late Jodie Whittaker. And of course, what they do, they destroyed the entire history of frickin' Doctor Who and made sure you understand that originally Doctor Who was a little black girl.
Yeah, and not only that, but it got the worst ratings the series has ever gotten in its entire history. And they still came out and said, we still like it because it's what we want and it's going to continue.
Right, because BBC or whatever that network, it's all federal funded, right?
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
So
the
they
BBC particularly, Although Boris Johnson is pulling the plug on him, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
But I do think, I'm going to put it this way, I do think this Disco and Picard has a lot of nostalgia still, people still pulling for it nostalgically, which is the reason why I think it's doing as well as it is. But there's a lot of people that are not happy with it. And as far as it getting 3 seasons, it's slated to get 3 seasons. It probably will still get 3 seasons just on spite. But Disco has been on the bubble from day one. And there's a lot of, and I would be very surprised if Disco gets a 4th season.
Yeah, I think it's just agenda. They want to keep pushing it. There's people behind it.
Yeah.
But the thing with Picard, though, to end from my point of view on it, they did have an interesting twist, and I don't know if it was the last episode, but it's one of the recent episodes where the dude there, can't remember his name. I refuse to remember any of these people's names, by the way.
I just call him Legolas.
Yeah, that Legolas. Yeah, that guy. He's turned out to basically looks like he's going to be a hologram.
Yeah. That's the biggest. I'm like, it's like they've injected so much Lord of the Rings crap in this friggin' show.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about the guy who owns the ship.
I'm talking about the Romulans.
Yeah, I'm talking about the guy who owns the ship. Yeah.
The Romulans became the space elves, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it still goes back to me with me for this kind of concept that for some reason, starting with JJ, continuing on with his boy, his little minion there, Kurtzman, that they have this complete misconception of Star Trek that each race has one planet that they live upon. The whole dialogue with Romulans from the very first JJ movie all the way up to Picard, they have this concept, and it doesn't make any sense. The Romulan space empire is enormous. It's enormous. Yeah. And another thing, humans, and the whole Trumpian thing and them being racist and stuff like that. You do know that the Federation is gigantic with hundreds of species in it.
Thousands.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's just inanity, dude. They have no clue what they're doing at all. How in the hell are Romulans refugees? What are you talking about? They have thousands of gigantic spaceships. What?
Well, I thought this was going to get bloody. So Todd's tapping out, man.
He tapped out early. Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Yeah. So Todd, you want to have the last word here? If I can get a promise from Bob and Chester not to say anything.
I'll mute myself.
Well, no, I haven't seen any of the episodes of Short Decks or whatever it's called, but it's fascinating to just how long this franchise has sort of lived out, right?
Yeah.
There was 5 shows, and then now we're getting 2 more, so we're on show 7, or iteration 7, you know what I mean? And of course I agree with a lot of their points. There's some really bad writing. I didn't like all the pivoting that they did in the first season. I really would have liked to seen this, even though he talked about the war happened inside of a few moments in one episode, and then boom, she was the villain and was put in jail and stuff. So the war would have actually been the cool thing I wanted to see. Like, who doesn't want to see that? All these types of ships fighting, and we really just set a bad tone for me. And then I had to take it on its merit of where it was going and stuff like that. And there have been some good episodes. Like, there was an episode where they went to Doug Jones' homeworld and his sister and stuff like that. Yeah. Really well written Star Wars or Star Trek like episode. Yeah. Right. And there was a episode in the second season where they were on a planet that didn't have our technology, but one guy kind of knew, I forget that was actually a really good episode.
The Prime Directive episode. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, exactly. And that was a good episode. And it had a lot of that feel from the, what Roddenberry created these shows around. He talked about the altruistic aspects of this show. And, so yeah, there's been some good moments here and there, and that's kind of what I hinge on. Is 1, it looks great. 2, there's a few good moments. The Picard is acted really well. There are some interesting characters. Now, if we get into the meat of them, that'll be great. I don't particularly like this white or this blonde-haired doctor that they brought on.
Yeah.
I could do without her acting. She's probably the worst one in the show. The black female is very, very interesting. Her character, I really want to know more about.
I'm done with her busting Picard's balls every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
But her, I really want to know where some of their history, and see if they get into some of that. I wonder if they would actually make him look, do some episodes where they make him look younger, or something.
Patrick Stewart just doesn't have it left in him to do that.
It
doesn't have the physicality left for it.
No, his Alzheimer's is set in, and he's stuck on liberal "gotta save the world" mode. So
yeah.
But let's see where they go from here. It's not complete trash TV. Let's put it that way. If this were on the network, it probably would be watched by a lot more people.
I think you actually hit on one of the biggest problems I have with the show is the fact that there have been some decent episodes on both shows, which means they're capable of doing something good. Yeah. They just don't.
Yeah. I mean, because you mentioned 3 episodes that were good out of how many?
There was 18 season 1. I mean, and 2 and 13 in season 1. So you're talking like between 25 to 30 episodes.
Right. And 3 of them were Star Trek like.
There was a few more. I just hit some of the high notes.
Yeah. No, I agree with those 3. I don't agree with the rest of them.
Todd, you get to finish it out, man. We're sorry. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, that's all right. Bob's fault. Chester.
I'm new.
But we want to thank Bob for coming. He is a great pontificator, and maybe we should get him more often because it's always good to bring new blood on the show.
Yeah, let's
get rid of Durakin. We can get rid of Durakin anytime.
Yeah,
No,
and
I'm just kidding.
and Bob's got the hookup too, man. And Bob's my boy, man. I'm happy to have him on the Pontificators if he wants to be.
Yeah, Bob got the wipes too. It's not just
next time I'll team with you against Chester.
Okay.
Chester's that formidable.
Yeah, well,
the masses against him.
Yeah,
he had
I'm
2
happy.
weeks to prepare. I thought we'd be doing this last week, so
Yes, I didn't think about you in that entire time, brother.
Yeah.
He thought about you all the time.
He thought about you all the time, man. He spooned with his body pillow. That looks like
I did. My Dai Makura is all sappy.
Oh.
We're like, I will win at all costs.
Yes, demonetized.
Yep.
Oh, that's right. For a long time, you were. This time it's my fault because I think I was the one that said coronavirus. So.
Well, it's okay. You can blame me. I'm happy having the title of the demonetizer. I'm good with that.
You like that? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Then you still get the title. Yeah. Thank you so much, Bob. And we'll get you into the private chat. And what we do behind the scenes is we come up with topics and kind of figure out things that we will do for next week. So you were a welcome addition here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I see you in the chat all the time. So this is fun getting to hang out with you face to face.
Yep.
So you guys ready? You want to wind down?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, Jody, you got a party shot?
No.
I will say that I did give Star Trek Discovery a fair shake. I actually had viewing parties with my neighbors. And the first couple episodes, I thought, wow, this is really different. They may actually pull this off. And then my enthusiasm faded. I watched the whole first episode. And that was pretty much it for me. I think I had made a point early on that each Star Trek series, it was different than the one that came before it, but it always had certain principles that were established by Roddenberry for what the future, version of our world would be like. And I just think that there's too much of that that's missing from Abrams' Trek, whether that's the rebooted films or the new series, STD and Picard. So that's going to be a no for me, dog.
Yeah.
Joe's out. So Chester, parting shot.
Yeah, well, it was a lot of fun having conversations today about coronavirus and stuff. And of course, you guys all should know, Todd and I are good friends, and it's all in good fun, just playing around, because he's not completely wrong anyway. But do definitely come over and check out my channel over at Chester Busby or on YouTube, or just go to www.fanspeak.live, and you can find me where I am currently sitting upon and will remain strongly upon the blacklist of YouTube if you enjoy that kind of things, because I am, after all, the demonetizer.
The demonetizer. So Bob, what says you?
Well, I appreciate you guys letting me in here, man. I've been wanted to hang out with you with you, Art, for a long time, man. Like you said, I've been in the chat for a while. I do have a channel. I do a show every Tuesday called Nerd Culture Clash. We talk about whatever stupidity comes into our head. Sometimes we hit on something fairly important. I'm also on the Wrestling Council every Thursday at
we don't
9
talk
PM.
wrestling here. This is a Sans Wrestling Zone.
But we talk wrestling over there, man. Me, Antonio Bryce, Boogie Bentley, Yul Carter, 9 p.m. EST, the SMB Network, and Ikari Press. So check us out there.
Oh, Lordy.
Cool. Todd, you're up.
I don't have. How do you follow wrestling?
That's true.
We all know that.
Over on Ignition tuned in. We talk about vaudeville. Come check us out.
You know what?
Where's the big hook? Where's the big hook?
I just watched.
Let me out, Sam.
On Abbott and Costello, man. It was actually pretty hilarious. Those guys, their whole career was old vaudeville, like stand-up routines.
Yeah,
That's all
yeah.
it was.
That's what they came out of.
They were just very good at it. So when vaudeville went away, they were able to sustain it. So yeah, don't you knock vaudeville.
Yeah, Chaplin as well, right?
I love Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein meets Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Wolfman's one of my favorite movies.
Oh yeah, good. I love that.
Hey Art, when you're ready to sign off, you've got a super chat.
Oh yeah,
that was going to be my sign off, but I was waiting for Todd.
No, go ahead. You're good.
It's he been done for an hour or so, dude. Y'all good.
We always just step all over Todd. Like it's horrible. We were all competing to talk over Todd at a moment. It was Chester, Bob, and myself. Sorry about that, Todd.
No, you're fine. You're fine. You're good.
All right, man. Well, thank you guys for showing up, hanging out, giving us 3 hours. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Thanks for all the super chats, D Geek Art and Blue Samurai Zero. Thank you so much for the $5. And yeah, we will keep doing this, brother. We're building this Pontificator show, and it's going every week we get better at it. We get more subs, we get more people in. So it's really going strong. So thanks for supporting. Thanks to everybody for coming in and hanging with us. And we'll see you next week. Take care.
Later.